And we're live. Mr. Maxwell, how are you, sir?
Mr. Rogan.
Always good to see you, brother.
Yeah.
And you brought your bag of all your belongings.
All my goodies, man. Everything I own in this world. I'll show it to you.
Yeah,
People are always curious about this.
This always comes up with my wife whenever I say, Steve Maxwell's going to be on the podcast. That's that guy that lives out of the bag.
Yeah.
Look at him.
Pretty crazy. This is everything I own in this world.
That's insane.
Fits right in my back.
He has a, that's not even a really large backpack. Like if you brought that elk hunting, people would be upset with you.
Liters. And then a little man purse, you know?
So a man purse in a
little
backpack?
Man purse. I carry my cords and my iPad and stuff like that.
Wow.
Stuff I need in that plane. And I travel all over the world.
Wow.
And, pack really carefully, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
3 T-shirts, 3 pair of pants, 3 pair of shorts, a rain jacket, 2 lightweight hoodies, a long sleeve T-shirt. I can pretty much recite. I never felt more liberated than when I got rid of all my stuff.
Wow.
And I'm in a different country every couple of weeks. A lot of people say, hey, why not the roller bag, Steve? If you travel in any kind of third world country, down cobblestones, I actually had a roller bag, but I ditched it my first trip to London. I changed trains like 4 times, going up and down those damn stairs with a clunk, 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 a roller bag. I said, you know what? This really sucks. I'm going to carry it on my body. So that's, I don't get any money from these guys, but it's a Tom Bin, B-I-H-N, fantastic travel bags. So well configured. You wouldn't believe the stuff I get in there. I even have my whole workout gym in that thing, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what kind of stuff's in there that you carry around with you everywhere? Now, this Tom Bin, is this for hiking or is this just primarily a travel bag?
It's a travel bag. I wouldn't want to take a serious hike with it, but
it looks like it's pretty sturdy.
Very sturdy. I use packing cubes. There's different packing ways. A good resource for your listeners that travel full time, go to onebag.com. He has many recommendations for various bags and where you can just basically one carry-on bag and travel anywhere in the world for several weeks at a time.
If you want to smell.
Onebag.com. Well,
just kidding.
A lot of this stuff is high tech. I just wash my T-shirts out in the sink, you know.
Very
Use a
high
little bit of
tech.
soap.
Well, if you wear one of the things that I found from hiking and camping for long periods of times, wool.
Wool is great.
There's a great company called First Light, First Lite, that a buddy of mine's a part of. My friend Ryan Callahan, out of Montana, and actually Ketchum, Idaho. Met him in Montana, but they make wool outer gear and inner gear, like long johns, stuff along those lines.
Wool is fantastic.
A lot of hunting gear, and you can wear that stuff for days, and it doesn't smell.
Well,
because
see,
it's
a lot of
natural.
this stuff is this stretch polyamide. It's like a little elastane, a nylon type material, which is real stretchy. It's silver impregnated. Silver helps stop the bacteria from multiplying.
Okay.
So you can get like 3 or 4 days out of this T-shirt.
Really?
Yeah, and it doesn't stink.
Maybe you could.
Well,
I stink. Dude. I'm a stinky person.
here's my gym. Check this out. I can train rubber band for doing isometrics. I can do good mornings.
What is the amount of tension on that rubber band?
They just say heavy duty, but remember, the further you stretch it, the harder it gets. It gives this old man plenty of stretch. Maybe not you.
I have a bowling ball bag that I bought just so that I could take on the road with me, so I could throw a 50-pound kettlebell in it.
Yeah, that works. Although I try not to check, but
I never use it once.
This is my cardio, obviously. A little jump rope. You can jump rope anytime, any place, anywhere. If you can't run, I like to still do a little running. Best self-defense ever, right? Sprint the hell away, man.
Yeah, if you could run further than the person trying to kill you.
And I don't want to be I don't want to be like one of these old guys that can't run, so it comes in handy.
That's great.
And this is a little homemade suspension device. I can set this any length.
A suspension device?
Yeah, I use it for isometrics, bodyweight rows, chin-ups. Basically, do you know your knots?
Not really.
I used to be a Boy Scout back in the day.
I know a couple of fishing knots.
Bow line, right? You should know that one. PVC. And then this is called a Prusik knot. So I can slide this, right, up and down the handle. But if you would grab that handle and put weight on it, see, it doesn't move.
Oh, I see.
So it's instantly adjustable.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. Prusik knot. It's climbers use
How do you spell that? Prusik.
Prusik.
Okay.
If you go to Animated Knots, it's like a little app you can throw on your iPhone. It shows you how to do like.
What's the app called? What is it?
Animated Knots.
Animated Knots?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can. Shows you every kind of knot. So I can just throw this over a tree, do chin-ups, body weight rows.
Oh, wow.
But if I want, I can stand on it, and I can do isometrics. I'm really into isometrics these days.
Yeah, you showed me a lot of those the last time we worked out together, and it was
So-
really interesting what you're trying to do now.
Isolation type movements. I can do deadlifts. Just absolutely incredible the kind of work that you can get like 15, 20 minutes. Great for you. You're on the road doing your comedy act all the time, going to the UFCs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, kettlebell, it's good, but it is a pain in the ass to
They
take
lug
with you.
around, yeah.
Man, you can just, in your hotel room, literally in 20 minutes, your tongue will be hanging out. Shockingly metabolic, amazing cardio. At the same time, you get every muscle from your head to your feet. Really good stuff. I knew about isometrics back in the 60s when, as a young wrestler, our coach used to use a lot of this stuff. So anyway, that's the workout, Jim.
Wow. You know, Bruce Lee was really into isometrics. He was into what they would call dynamic tension, which is
Dynamic
essentially the
tension.
same thing.
The great Charles Atlas, Charles Bronson.
Well, Charles Atlas, those comic book ads that they used to have in the back, like you were a 98-pound weakling and becoming like a big stud. That was like what he was
a
advertising.
lot
like
of
different dynamic tension
tensions
exercises.
and so forth. The father of modern isometrics was the guy by the name of Alexander Zas, who was a Russian circus performer. And he was traveling around doing wrestling and bending steel, breaking chains over his chest. He was just a little guy about my size. And he was captured by the Germans during World War I and imprisoned. And Zas, in order to get a little extra food because he's worried about losing his physique, he offered to train the commandant's dog for extra food. So meanwhile, he's practicing his isometrics on the cell bars every day, and he eventually bent the bars and escaped. Went back to the circus, got recaptured. This time they put him in chains. He broke the chains and bent the bars and escaped, not just twice, 4 times. He escaped from the Germans.
What?
It's all written in his biography. I
Has
can't
that
think
been
of the name.
verified? Has anyone ever Wikipedia this gentleman? Back then they couldn't. You couldn't verify.
It
He
would
might
be
have just
hard to
told a bunch of
verify.
goofy stories.
But there's no doubt that this guy was strong. There's actually an old black and white YouTube of him breaking chains and stuff.
Jesus.
Alexander Zas. Another proponent of isometrics was the famed Henry Wittenberg.
See if you can pull up a picture of that guy.
Yeah, Zas.
How
Zass. His biography is
How big was he?
fantastic. Probably about 160 pounds, 165.
How the fuck did he bend chains?
Well, he started as a kid in the force. He actually went to
That's him right there.
Yeah, there we go. When
pretty
he
swole.
was a young boy, he was really.
Damn.
I'll tell you something. I've lifted beams like that. That beam is really heavy.
He's got a beam wrapped around his neck.
Actually,
he's got a
he's
head-
lifting it with his teeth.
Oh my God, that's what that is?
Yeah, it's a teeth lift. He has a special mouthpiece where he's gripping it with his jaws.
Oh, my
And
God.
using his neck. Imagine how hard it'd be to choke that guy out
Yeah,
with that kind of neck.
that's insane.
And he would bend saplings in the forest because he couldn't afford steel, obviously, and he would bend trees to get his strength.
Wow.
These guys were the real deal back in the day, man. They were pretty amazing. And it's funny, too. No supplements,
Yeah.
No designer whey protein or
Nothing.
BCAAs. There was none of this like, dude, I'm going anabolic or
Yeah.
catabolic. It's been 15 minutes after my workout. They just ate good food and just trained, A lot of meat.
They were also closer to monkeys because it was like, it was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
They hadn't evolved yet.
Hadn't evolved yet.
But these people back then, they also didn't really understand like the modern principles of strength and conditioning. Like, I don't even think they
I
knew
wouldn't sell 'em
exactly.
short.
No, I'm not saying it in a bad way at all. But I don't think they necessarily had like an understanding of all the mechanisms involved. They just knew you train hard,
Cause and
you get
effect.
stronger.
Yeah, cause and effect.
Train hard, get stronger. This guy knows what he's doing. Go visit him.
You can actually buy his book on Amazon. It's
yeah?
a pretty interesting biography. And I found it fascinating. It was translated from Russian to English. It translates kind of funny. One of the confusing things is in Russia, they use different names for the same person. So they keep, yeah, I know, it's weird, man. And
Like how so?
they just called him by 4 different names.
It was like, are they nicknames or?
Yeah, like nicknames. Like Christie's from the Ukrainian, right? Don't they use different names? Yeah.
Yeah, you use your father's.
Unfortunately, you're off camera, so
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to hear you.
Yeah, no, they use different names, like little pet names.
Huh. And
So as I'm reading, I'm thinking, who the hell are they talking about?
Right.
And then I'm reading back, oh, they're talking about Alexander, but they referred to him with 4 different names in the text. It was just a kind of a weird translation, but absolutely fascinating about his life.
That's so weird. You know, it's really interesting when you see those old school strongman type characters, because there's some people that were doing things back in the day. Like one I always bring up is the catch wrestling pioneer, Farmer Burns.
Farmer Burns,
who used to do these. He used to hang himself by his neck.
By his
neck. Pull this up, Jamie, because there's actually photos of this guy. This guy had a neck like my waist, and he only weighed about 165 pounds, and he used to drop like a hangman's drop and catch himself by his neck. Look at him here.
And he was actually beating heavyweights back in the day. This is a day where it wasn't just for the pin.
Right.
You could do submissions in order to force a guy into the shoulders, and people could also tap. And this is rough, tough American martial art.
Yeah, this is what's now known as catch wrestling, or catch as catch can. And when you would get someone in a submission hold, they would call it a catch. And there were a lot of submission holds that they had back in those days that are still super effective today. And if you go back over the old depictions and old images of submission moves from Farmer Burns, there's stuff that's still completely applicable
Some
today.
of this stuff is awesome, man. I actually had his original mail order course back in the day when I was a householder collecting stuff. I actually had his original home training course.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I had to keep it in plastic and stuff like that.
Yeah, like look at this neck crank he's got going on here. He had a lot.
That's the old Quarter Nelson, man.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of moves that they had that they used to use back then that are absolutely effective today.
But just ask Josh Barnett.
Yes, I was just going to bring him up.
He really surprised Dean. Dean's a hell of a black belt. You know, really well-trained black belt, and I think even he was surprised with that headlock attack.
Yeah, I mean, he caught him in a scarf hold, too, which is like about as old school as it gets.
Old school as it gets. So some of these things are so old, they're new. A lot of the younger guys.
Right.
I mean, when I was coming up, in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, there were so many different defenses against the headlock. We just basically kind of gave up on using it. But if you don't practice that stuff, you get some wrestler, catch wrestler, judo guy, some rough guy, it gets you in one of those headlocks unexpectedly. Wow, he can really hurt you.
Especially a really strong guy. Like
really strong
one of the things that's coming into play a lot is that bulldog choke. You rarely see it. You see like every couple of years someone will get one. Last one being Raquel Pennington got it on Ashley Evans Smith, and Ashley Evans Smith was kind of known as being like the grappler in that matchup, and Raquel Pennington was more of a striker. But she caught her in that bulldog choke and put her to sleep.
Describe that bulldog choke.
Someone's like it's like a schoolyard headlock.
Okay,
you know?
They're on their knees or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, and you're right in front of them. But the thing is, when someone's head is here and you get that forearm under the choke and you clamp down, man, there's not a lot that guy can do. There's not a lot. When the head is here, and if you're a strong person, you're fully locked in, you're sitting on it, there is not a lot. There you go, right there. You see it right there.
We used to refer to that as the rodeo choke because it's like a cowboy taking down a steer almost.
It's a good way to put it, yeah.
Actually, you know
That
who
guy's got a
used
good
that
grip on that
really,
right there.
really early was Bruce Lee choked out Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yes. He did in that was Game of Death.
Game of Death, one of my favorite movies.
He also had the first MMA gloves in that movie.
First MMA gloves,
Yeah.
and that was Enter the Dragon.
Oh, that was Enter the Dragon. That's right.
Remember,
That's right.
he did
the armbar.
Was it an armbar or was it the? It was a neck crank. What do they call that?
Was it a crucifix?
Crucifix. There we go.
Yes, that's right.
So he was pretty early.
Oh, he was, I mean, as far as like being open-minded, he was so far ahead of his time with combining martial arts. I mean, he truly was the original mixed martial artist. Because in the time, like even when I was starting out in the 80s, the early 80s, you really weren't supposed to train anywhere else. Like I would get the stink eye if I would go to a boxing gym and try to learn some boxing. They would say at my Taekwondo school that you basically could learn everything you want here. You didn't need to go anywhere else. And you definitely didn't want to learn Muay Thai or any of those other techniques. You just would. It's taking time away from your practice here, and this is what you really need to do.
Well, that's martial arts teachers trying to protect their turf They're worried about losing income
Mm-hmm.
if the students are going from this to that to the other thing.
Well, you see it from even jiu-jitsu instructors, unfortunately, where jiu-jitsu instructors who only train with the gi start saying terrible things about people who train no gi. And the reason being is because they have too many techniques that rely upon handles.
On handles.
Yeah, and as soon as they roll with a grappler and they're going no gi and they roll with like a really good solid college wrestler, they're gonna get smoked.
It's pretty tough. I'll
Yeah,
tell you.
they just can't. They can't deal with someone who's just really good at manipulating bodies that are sweaty and with gable grips and overhooks and underhooks, and they're used to those collars and they're used to like grabbing sleeves.
It's a whole different game, man.
Yeah.
Being a former NCAA Division I wrestler, I hated the gi for my first 3 years of jiu-jitsu. And then finally, as I started getting a little older, getting close to my 50s, I started loving it because it does slow that game down. And,
Yeah, completely slows it down.
and
yeah.
so if you're smaller and weaker, the gi definitely gives you a chance to even the odds there a little bit.
Well, it allows you to control people, and I think one of the things that's really good about the gi is people that live in cold climates. If you ever get in a self-defense situation with someone wearing a jacket, like I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I said, if you are in some sort of a street fight with a jiu-jitsu black belt and you have a leather jacket on, you might as well be a dead person. Because if that guy just grabs your collar, all he has to do is get inside your collar, grab a hold of the back of that collar, and you're gone. He's gonna just clamp a hold of the other side, and he's gonna choke you to death. Like you have a weapon
It's
wrapped
shocking
around
how
your
easy
body.
it actually is, man.
Yeah,
People
or a judo
always-
person.
People always think like in a straight fight, you're going to be using all this fancy stuff, but it's going to be the most basic stuff you learn as a white belt and a blue belt.
Yeah.
You're going to fall back on that stuff.
Most likely, yeah. I
And
mean,
you have to think like a person you're fighting probably is not a trained martial artist.
no,
let's
most
face it.
likely.
No,
A
most
buddy of
likely
mine
not.
got in a street fight with a trained martial artist once. He told me that these two guys, he and this other guy were like yelling at each other or something on the highway, and they decided to pull over. So they pulled over to the side of the road. They got out, and they started duking it out, and he threw a leg kick, and the guy checked it, and then the guy shot for a double, and he stuffed it, and they're both looking at each other like, oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
And he said they went at it for like 10 minutes and then high-fived each other afterwards and got back in the car.
Well, that had a good outcome on it.
Well, they realized, they're like, okay, we thought...
I'm fighting another trained guy.
They thought each guy thought they were going to get out and beat the shit out of some guy who didn't know what he was doing. And they both got out and they're moving around like, oh, look at this motherfucker. And then after a while, they thought it was funny.
That is, well, I have used jiu-jitsu a few times.
In a fight, in a street fight?
Yeah, in street. Back when I had my school in Philadelphia.
Oh, when crazy people would come in the gym or
Yeah,
something?
well, we had gym fights, but
Yeah.
a couple of times even on the street.
Really?
Just crazy stuff, man. I had a cab driver try to run me over one time, and I was furious. I used to commute by bike quite a bit, and when I went by, I was so mad I hit the side of his cab, and just gave him a couple express my opinion, and
Right.
then the guy pulls over and jumps out of the cab. Yeah, starts coming at me, and I just used the inside control and just laid him over the top of the cab, and it was over before it started. He gave up and just got back in, but thank God for basic stand-up self-defense.
Well, also thank God for him that you're a nice guy. You
Yeah, well.
didn't decide to smash his face in.
Nowadays, man, you smash someone's face in, you're going to have all sorts of lawyers knocking on the door. And
If there's a video of it.
if
You got to wear a
well,
disguise
there's
everywhere you
almost
go.
always a video of it nowadays.
Gotta wear
man.
disguises, bro. You gotta go out of the house with like a mask on. That's the move.
How do you do it, Joe? It must be tough.
Just gotta
man.
wear mustaches and shit. Yeah, I don't know. Street self-defense is obviously last alternative. Like you would most likely never use any of the techniques that you learn. If you're lucky, you could live your whole life and never use
Never
any
use
martial
it.
arts. If you're
Hopefully,
lucky.
if you're lucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always,
That's the goal.
I personally like to run, not because I think running is such a good workout. I like to run for the skill of running, because if you don't run, you're not good at running. Mm-hmm. Most people don't like it. I do it more as a martial art because
Really?
I want to run away.
Right. But when you run, you
And old people can't run. You see the way most people move. I don't want to be one of those, mid-60, 70-year-old guys that, can't run. So I practice sprints at least once, sometimes twice a week, just for the skill of being able to run fast.
Well, sprints are really good for your system too, right? Your
They can
endocrine
be very
system.
good systemic-wise.
Yeah.
It was a real interesting study done in running. They found that people that run in the zone, that like do 10Ks, 5K, competitive running, marathons, triathlons and such, actually have shorter life expectancy than people that don't run at all. Well, I was really surprised. They claim it's the oxidative stress. My theory is people don't use the lung apparatus properly and breathe properly. So they found that people that outlived all of them were the people that run real slow, just nice, leisurely, like Zen running.
They live longest.
They live longest.
Well, have you ever heard the theory that there's only a certain amount of heartbeats that you get in your life?
I have heard that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of almost makes sense when you look at the
Finite,
age of professional athletes, like how they die young.
They flame out and die pretty young.
Yeah. Now that's something that you have been really a pioneer in avoiding, like keeping your body healthy, like deep into your 60s and 70s. And I know you have a whole program about that, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes, I do. We call it Jiu-Jitsu for a Lifetime. We're actually going to do a training camp this next spring in April in Maui.
What a good place for a training camp.
Yeah. Hey, how would you like to come?
I would love to if I'm available.
Why don't you come as my guest?
I would like to, but I'm busy as fuck, dude.
Man,
it's hard. It's hard for me.
Just tell all those guys, hey, I'm just taking like a week off and going to Maui.
It's hard. I would have to. It's like my time off is most of the time. If I actually have actual time off, I spend it with my family.
Well, bring your wife and your young daughter.
Maybe
they would love it. They can take paddleboard lessons while you come up and do a little
paddleboard lessons.
Yeah,
I do.
right.
Maui's nice, but man, every time I'm there, somebody gets bit by a shark. I don't know what the fuck is going on.
I don't know about that either.
Yeah,
I have that morbid fear ever since I saw that movie Jaws. It's like, forget it, man.
Yeah, while we were there, we were watching TV, and there was a newscast about this kid who got his leg mauled. And my kids were just in the pool, or just in the ocean, rather, that day. We were just snorkeling. And then we came back, and we were watching this thing about the surfer who just got mangled. And, they had him all stitched up, and he was fucked up.
It's just such a primal fear.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I know it's irrational because my chance of being eaten by a shark is way less than being in an accident in a car. And I rent cars and drive.
People always say that, but that doesn't make me feel any better because also the odds of you being eaten by a shark when you're on the shore radically decrease.
That's true. If you never go in the ocean, there's zero chance.
Like the odds increase when you get in the water. So if you don't go in the water, you won't get bit by a shark. That's just a fact.
When I go
Another
to Maui,
one? What is this?
I just go
Did
to
you see this last week?
Baby Beach.
No.
This is Sunset Beach, I believe is what it's called, which is just south of LA.
Oh, Christ.
A giant
What are you going to
great
show
orc
me?
breaches the water.
No, dude, you just sealed it.
Oh,
no.
no.
I'm definitely not going back in there.
Right off of Huntington Beach?
Yeah.
Good
Oh,
God.
my God. This is insane.
Giant shark. I don't know,
That
7-8
is
foot
one
shark.
big ass shark.
That's got to be bigger than 8 feet.
Woo.
They were so
Does it
far
say
away.
how
I
big
don't
it
think
is?
they know because they just randomly caught it because they were doing some other stuff. And they
So
just
he
saw
was
it.
filming something else and the thing just breached the water.
Yeah, they
Oh,
caught
my
it
God.
back
Show that again.
Could you imagine?
Look at the fucking size of that thing. Dude, that's a big shark. That's not a 7-foot shark.
Now,
That
can you
thing's
imagine
giant.
some kid on a surfboard and it just comes up underneath there? And that's how they stun
Lord.
those seals, if you've ever watched sharks hunt.
Yeah.
The way they hit and knock it kind of unconscious almost, and then
Did you ever see the film that they put that they got right off of Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco? Some tourists were out there and they were just filming the water, taking pictures of each other, and seeing all these people hanging around by the water's edge. And a great white fucked this seal up in front of everybody, like right in front of everybody. And we think it was probably 2 different seals that it killed, because it killed one, and there was this big bloody puddle, and then it seems like it got a hold of a second one. It's hard to tell because you're just looking at the surface of the water, but massive red. And I mean, these people are 30, 40 feet away from this thing as it's tearing the seal apart. It's really pretty crazy.
that is crazy. There was an awesome picture of a orca hunting with its calf, a great white.
Oh yeah,
The
yeah, I've
orca
seen
totally
that. Yeah,
fucked the great white up.
yeah, they.
It stunned it, and it used jiu-jitsu, man. It basically grabbed and turned it over, and if sharks don't keep moving, they basically drown.
Yeah.
It held it till it basically drowned, and then it ate its liver. And the people that analyzed the video felt that the mother orca was teaching the baby how to hunt.
How to kill a shark. Yeah, sharks,
Crazy, right?
they're not nearly as agile as an orca,
As an
and
orca.
nowhere near as smart. I
Nowhere
mean, they're
near
really
as
dumb. They have a tiny brain. They just eat and swim around. But the orcas, when you see that video, when they flip it upside down, something about flipping a shark upside down also kind of like knocks it out.
Yeah, they just go passive.
Yeah.
I've seen people actually do it, like in shows and stuff where they'll just take and just flip it and rub its belly.
How bizarre.
That's pretty bizarre, man.
There's a lot of weird flaws in God's early designs.
In
It's
God's
almost
early design.
like designs like that, like the design of a shark. It's like, what? It has to keep swimming.
It just has
so
to keep
here's that footage off of San Francisco. This is a different one.
It's the same one.
Is it? Well, why
Yeah,
is it so close?
This is a little bit later into it as it got closer. It starts off a little farther away.
Oh, I see. Okay. No, well, let's go further away then, because the further away you get to see it. Back it up from the beginning, because you see that
You
these
actually
people are
see
just
the
kind of.
stripe,
This
yeah.
isn't the one though, Jamie.
Really?
Yeah, the other one, it's from a distance, and you actually see the shark.
The orca, you mean?
Well, which one is this, Jamie?
This is the shark attack.
Oh, this is
the seal,
shark-
I'm sorry.
This is
Eating
a
the
shark
seal.
eating the seal.
Yeah.
This is right off of Fisherman's Wharf, where all the restaurants are, where people are
Wow.
walking around.
A frenzy.
Yeah, see okay, so it's more than one great white too.
Holy crap.
But there's more than one footage of this
Yeah.
apparently. Obviously, this is a big deal, and everybody has a phone.
True.
But to be watching this, I mean, these feet. Look at that. That's like, what is that? 30 feet?
That's pretty intense, man.
Yeah. There's a better footage though, a different angle, which is a little bit further off, where you actually see the shark breach the water with a seal in its mouth. It's like, I'm gonna stand ashore.
Yeah, I think I'll stand ashore.
You know, Nick Diaz, he swam from Alcatraz 5 different times. 5 different times that guy swam from Alcatraz to shore.
Well,
in that-
one
in
of
that
my
water.
one of my heroes, Jack LaLanne, used to swim that while pulling a boat full of people while shackled.
Yeah, and
He
when,
did it like as an annual birthday event.
Yeah,
What a man!
he's an animal.
Like the guy was still, doing all sorts of crazy exercises right up until his 90s.
Yeah, he was a crazy man. He really a real pioneer of health and fitness and
Health and
wellness
fitness.
and juicing. You know?
Yeah, he got into juicing. I always tell these kids, don't be listening to these trainers in their 20s, their 30s, or even their 40s, because they haven't been over to the other side. They don't know what's sustainable. They don't know, they just don't have the long-term experience. All my mentors were guys in their 80s. They're the guys I want to learn from. Guys that went to the other side, that are super fit, really healthy. They're the guys I've been looking at, to put my own program together. I don't want to listen to these young guys. They have no fucking idea, man. I
Well-
didn't. A lot of the shit I did when I was even in my 40s and even early 50s,
Look
I
at
had
him
no
there.
clue. Yeah, there we go.
He would tow not just a boat.
Yeah,
he
no,
would
it
tow
was a
like
bunch of boats,
7
man.
boats or something crazy. I mean, like 70 people. I think he towed like a person for every year of his life. So here he's towing like a whole stream of boats. Like, how many boats were back there?
The guy was an amazing swimmer. That water was cold, and it
Yeah.
doesn't look to me like he has a wetsuit on. It looks like he may just have like a singlet type.
It's hard to tell. It looks like
Yeah,
a
it's
wetsuit
hard.
there.
Okay, there's a wetsuit.
It's hard to tell. But either way, guy's
Either
a
way,
savage.
that guy was amazing fitness guy. There he is.
And he's handcuffed.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But here's a guy that stood the test of time. He
Yeah, he
got
certainly
to
did.
his 80s and 90s. Another guy was Master Elliot Gracie. I mean, that
Yeah.
guy. I actually had a jiu-jitsu lesson with the guy, when he was in his late 80s.
Wow.
And, okay, he's not going to beat anybody, right, doing competitive
Right.
jiu-jitsu, but you wouldn't want to go up and mess with that old guy. He would mess you up.
He had some thick ass hands.
He had big hands, big forearms, and he would just slap it on you. I used to hate to be the guy that he demonstrated stuff on because he would just really put it on you. I felt damn near injured,
Yeah, well, he was a pioneer of no holds barred fights, like way back in the day. I mean,
Way
he was
back.
doing that in the 1940s, right?
Yeah, and even before him, his teacher, he didn't learn directly from this guy. His brothers did. Was that guy Ace Maeda, that little Japanese guy.
Yeah.
I had heard he won over 800 no holds barred fight. I don't know whether that's true or not.
Well, it's like the Hickson 400 no
Yeah.
number.
Exactly.
But
But Maeda, he did a lot of no holds barred type deals, and he was one of the guys that really developed that guard because he was finding that big American wrestlers and football players were putting him on his back, and he became deadly from fighting from his back. He kind of specialized in that particular position.
That's so fascinating because that was a big part of Helio's game too. with keeping.
Well, he's so little.
Yeah. I mean, he was like 140 plus pounds
Yep.
when he was competing and fighting against much larger men.
Much larger guys. I lived with him for a month down at his ranch in Terrazopolis, and I used to get daily lessons. And his favorite thing was to have you put himself in just a really bad position, like mounted or whatever, and then just basically defy you to do anything to him. And it's a great game that you can play well into advanced age. You just let the kids work on you a little bit and just play defense. And there was nothing I could do.
Wow.
I mean, he just, he basically knew everything I was going to do before I did it. He'd give his back, let you mount, and he basically, his defense was just so superb. You would have either had to use an unusual amount of strength to do anything, or, I mean, there was no fooling him. Let me just put it that way.
Well, Hickson used to let guys start on his back with a full rear naked choke, fully locked in. That's how he would start.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but if you could develop that kind of defense, then if you're safe from there, you're safe from everywhere. Like one of the big parts of jiu-jitsu, I'm sure you'll agree, is the ability to be safe in any position and the ability to understand what it takes to be safe in those positions. And the best way to do it, like Eddie Bravo did that when he was training for Hoyler. One of the big things that he did was he had people start off in bad positions. He would have people start off mounting them, have people start off in side control. He never started out just facing a guy. Where it's an equal, neutral position. Every position, every roll started with him on his back. Every roll started with him in a compromised position.
It's such a great way to work if you're working with people that don't have the same skill sets as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Hickson was in America for years and years and years. And he only had white belt, blue belt level guys to work with, but this is the way he kept his sword sharp.
Yeah.
He would put himself in these bad positions, partially closed triangles, maybe a partially closed omoplata, on the back with maybe a partially closed choke or whatever. And then he was just a genius at getting out of those positions.
Yeah, and if you can show your training partners what to do, you can actually make it more difficult for yourself. If you tell them what they're doing wrong. And, I mean, Hickson didn't just develop his own jiu-jitsu skills. Obviously, he had a lot of great students as well.
A lot of great students.
And a black belt under Hickson to this day is one of the most prestigious black belts that you can get.
I would say probably the closest thing you can get to Hickson is Luis Heredia in Maui. The guy's unbelievable. I love training with him.
And we were talking about Luis.
Old school, man.
Luis gave me my very first private lesson at Hickson's old place on Pico. That was before. I didn't know that there was a difference in the Gracies. When I was starting out, I was like, oh, this is Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, this is just like the UFC. I'm like, who's Hickson Gracie? Oh, that's the brother of Hoist.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know that he was the man. And so Carlson Gracie School was closer. It was off of Hawthorne, like right off of Sunset. That was closer to where I lived by 20 minutes. And, especially during traffic, it was a nightmare to get down to Pico. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to this place instead. So I fucked up and stopped training at the best place in the world. I didn't even know.
Well, that's how it was when I first started. I didn't have a clue how well, I just didn't appreciate how good these guys were.
But I got lucky, though.
Any given day, I could have a lesson with any of the brothers. They were one big happy family.
Yeah, and they were always there, too.
Always there.
I got lucky, though, that when I came to Carlson's, Mario Sperry was there. Carlos Bajeto was there. I got to watch those guys roll. I got to watch those guys compete. Vitor Belfort was there, and it was when Vitor was they were calling him Victor Gracie. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah, they would spell it with a K. I don't know what happened. They changed his name. I really don't understand what happened. But they were calling him Victor.
I know in Brazil, a lot of times the women are able to keep their original name, so they don't always take the name of their husbands.
Well, he was taking Carlson's name. I mean, he didn't. Belfort is his real name. He doesn't have a Gracie background.
Okay.
He was taking
So he didn't
Gracie.
have a mother that might have been a Gracie?
No.
Okay.
But there's some people that do that. Doesn't who has that going on?
Angela Gracie?
No. Someone has that going on. One of the men has that going on.
Roger Gracie, his father.
Hodger, yeah.
Yeah, Hodger is his father's Gomez.
Yes.
And his mother
that's
was
one
a
of
Gracie,
them. Yeah. So I think Caesar too. Doesn't
Okay.
Caesar have a similar situation? Caesar Gracie?
That I don't know, but I do know it's not uncommon for
Yeah.
a married woman to keep her maiden name.
That's interesting. But anyway, so I used to call, everybody called Vitor Victor back then. And like if you like look at the early UFCs, I'm pretty sure I remember someone pulled me aside and said you can't call him Victor Gracie at UFC 12. You can't call him Gracie because Horian was suing Carlson.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. Like Horian was suing all the other Gracies. They couldn't even use their last name. Meanwhile, Carlson Gracie is a legend.
A legend.
Like a real legend in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and in MMA. And he was the guy who came in and beat the guys that Ilio couldn't beat because Carlson was a bigger, tougher, stronger guy. I mean, he was like more of a bulldog approach, which is why it was perfect that he had that logo.
He
those
pretty
two
much
bulldogs.
bridged the gap between Elio's young sons. You know, Elliot was getting a little up there in age, and was starting to fail physically a bit, and his own sons were a little bit too young still. So Carlson Gracie was like the one to defend the family honor up until the point where Hickson and Halls Gracie got into their young man.
Yeah, and he had a fantastic group of students too.
He was an unbelievable teacher.
Murillo Bustamante. Mario Sperry. I mean, he had some really amazing students as well.
Well, they said his ability to go out and recruit talent was just incredible. He just knew how to do it. He had an eye for guys that were going to be really good.
Yeah, he also had like a great family environment, like that Carlson Gracie team. Like they were very tight knit. It's a fascinating time in the world of martial arts. If you go back and look at that, the early '90s and what happened to this. To jiu-jitsu in America and how it just sort of exploded and changed the face of martial arts.
It really did. I had my first experience in '89, and I just made up my mind I wanted to learn it. I went in as a NCAA Division I wrestler. I had a really good record. I was like most wrestlers, kind of hard-headed. What are these skinny Brazilian guys going to show me,
Right.
And then I'm tapped like a typewriter by Hoyler, and I'm like, oh, my God, what is this that he's doing to me? I got to learn this. And I asked Corian, how can I learn this martial art? He said, come out to Torrance. It's the only game in town. At that time, that was true. And
so you went from Philly all the way to Torrance to train.
And I would stay for a week. I'd have so much money. I was a former school teacher. And I had like a little retirement account set up, some money set aside, after I quit teaching, and money I'd set. So I used that to fund my jiu-jitsu education. In the meantime, I had opened up Maxwell. It was a personal training gym. I put some mats in the back, and I would usually go and take like $1,000, and when I run out of money, I would go back to Philly again. Since it was my business, I could just take off whenever I wanted.
Oh, that's great.
And then I had mats, and it was the first gym of the Eastern Seaboard. I would just get all my old wrestler friends, Philadelphia Judo Club, Aikido guys, and just go in there and just work with these guys and practice my jiu-jitsu. And then a couple months later, I'd go back and spend time again. And then I got smart. I started bringing the Gracies to my place, and then they would stay with me. I had Helson stay with me sometimes for a couple weeks. Hoyce actually lived with me for a month one time.
Well, I think Hoyce and Hoyler, they don't even have schools anymore. They just travel and do seminars, and they find that that's more lucrative. And they get away from the hassle of like having to pay rent and employees and all the other nonsense that comes with schools. And, they're just welcomed with open arms in these weekend seminars. And, I mean, if a guy like Hoyce or Hoyler or Hickson wants to do a seminar, like, who's going to say no?
Who's going to say no?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I do myself, I just go around showing the Gracies self-defense. And the other thing that I'm really into these days is just basically how can you keep your body still in the game? Because, I mean, it is fun to roll. It really is. It's something that you can do into advanced age, but you got to be careful, and you have to be very careful with the preparation of your body. And
what are the keys to a person that's like entering into their older age? What are the keys to maintaining the body's elasticity, your strength and vitality?
Well, one of the main keys is joint mobility. Every single day, you got to do some type of mobility. People get confused between flexibility and mobility. Mobility has a connotation of strength. You want to be able to voluntarily go in and out of the movement. I'll give an example. Being a grappler and a striker, I've seen your devastating kick, that spinning roundhouse thing you do. One way that, like, the difference between mobility, like flexibility would be you maybe doing a split or putting your foot up on an elevated surface and just holding it and stretching, right?
Right.
That's flexibility. But lifting your leg up slowly under control and extending it out and holding it, like the old Bruce Lee movie, that is mobility.
Right.
So practicing moving through the full range movement regularly is extremely good for the joints. You keep your ability to move. The other advice I have for these guys out there: tap early and tap often. Don't be a fool. And this whole concept that you can't tap to a lower belt, that gets so many guys hurt. I can't tell you how many purple belts or brown belts get really PO'd because some really big, strong, or technical blue belt gets them in a bad situation. They feel they can't tap, and they'll literally risk injury. That's insane.
Yeah, it is insane.
Why in the heck?
It's very unfortunate.
I don't know how that ever started, that you can't tap to a lower
Well,
belt.
the problem is, if you feel bad about tapping, that's one thing. But if you get injured, you're going to feel so much worse.
So much worse.
And it's going to take you so much longer to recover. If somebody catches you in a guillotine, you're like, oh boy, this is tight. You know what? Let me just tap. Fuck, I'm an idiot. How did I get caught in that? That feeling that you get is actually good for you.
It's good for you.
Because that way you'll realize, you can't just let your neck hang out there. You can't not defend. You can't think about those potential steps. And I see in a lot of jiu-jitsu situations, I see when a higher belt will go with a very enthusiastic and a very ambitious lower belt, they oftentimes disregard the possibility of getting tapped, and that's how they get tapped. Whereas some higher belts I've seen, they'll roll with a purple belt or a blue belt or a white belt, and they'll roll with everybody like that person's a ninja. They'll roll with every single person like that person is like the greatest grappler that they've ever faced in their life. And if they do that, I'm not talking about like going hard and being like really physical and hurting them.
Yeah, like a dick.
But being aware of all the possibilities and being on your toes and being at 10 at all times. If you do that, you're going to be fine.
Or purposely just put yourself in dangerous positions and get caught.
Yeah.
Just to practice. But what I think it was Horian's boys, either Henner or Huron, one of those guys. They mentioned a guy that worked in their school, a black belt in his 50s, who was really down in the dumps over having been roughed up by a blue belt. And they were saying, well, how old was the blue belt? And the guy was like in his 20s, and he outweighed him by about 30 pounds. And I think they were the ones that came up with the idea that, like, for every 10 years of age and for every 10 pounds of weight, that's like the guy having an extra belt on you. So
if he knows how to use it, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, let's just say a big, strong, athletic white belt that's 20 years old, and maybe outweighs me by 40 pounds. That's going to be like me fighting a guy, like a much higher skill level.
Yeah.
What he lacks in skill and technique, he's making up for with hustle and youth, and he's not going to get tired, and strength.
Well, I also think it's very dangerous to roll with people that are much larger than you. I mean, I think there's lessons to be learned in it, and I certainly did my share of it. But man, there's a lot of times rolling with much larger guys where you come off and your neck is just fucked up, or your back is making weird noises. It's like, Jesus, is this really worth it? Or if
unless
you roll
the
with
guy's
someone
really, really technical.
Yeah. Well, if someone's really, really technical, then it's completely different. But
like I could roll with you, and we could have a great time. You wouldn't try to kill me. You wouldn't try to crush me. Maybe you'd sweep me and come on top. But, the smart big guy, if he's rolling with a smaller guy or, an older guy, he's going to put himself on the bottom again or let you sweep me or whatever and just practice his defense in the bottom.
Well, I would way rather roll with a larger than me black belt than I would a larger than me purple belt.
Well, good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it also, like, if you roll with a larger than you black belt, like a Hodger Gracie or something, like that, they don't have anything to prove.
They're not going to hurt
you. Know what I mean? Like, they've also been doing it for their whole life. It's like they know how to do it correctly. Like, you can get away with so much with physical strength and explosiveness and just weight and power, but that doesn't make you any better. It's one of the reasons why I always tell people, if you want to learn jiu-jitsu properly, learn it from a little guy.
From a little guy.
Yeah, learn it from like a Barrett Yoshida or a Hoyler Gracie or an Eddie Bravo. If you learn jiu-jitsu from a smaller person, you're going to learn like really technical jiu-jitsu where they're not going to...
Like Master Elio,
Exactly.
His self-defense still stands the test of time, man.
Sure.
That's another thing that makes me really pleased to see that it's kind of gone full circle. Jiu-jitsu was kind of going the way of a lot of other martial arts. Like judo became like just a form of jacketed wrestling, really. Mm-hmm. And, taekwondo, tang sudo, they were at one point deadly martial arts. But now they're a lot of the martialness has been lost in a lot of these different, especially if they go Olympic. But that was happening to jiu-jitsu. You know, people are just basically shaking hands and jumping on their ass.
Right.
And it was like, what? You know, and that's a fun game. I'm not deriding it. I'm not saying that the guys are not formidable athletes. They're amazing. But, you know, for the average guy, they're never going to be really great. You know, they're just going to be so-so. They're doing it for fun. I think it's important that you back yourself up with the self-defense. And I see now a big trend to going back to the origins of jiu-jitsu. The self-defense has been really big. Guys want to know the basic stand-up street defense. And it was extremely well developed in the old Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It was very well developed. Gun, knife, stick, club, you know, all kinds of clinches, defending yourself against a guy trying to ground and pound. It was all there, but it was lost. It was lost.
Well, it is unfortunate when people are just trying to chase medals and win by points, and in doing so, they become like extremely unrealistic in the actual application against a fight, you know, or a fighter rather, who knows what they're doing. But one of the things that's really exciting right now is no-gi competition.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and what Eddie Bravo's done. Did you see the Eddie Bravo Invitational, which was number 6, was yesterday?
No, but I heard about it. I heard some of the results, and it sounds like a very good way to contest skill versus skill.
Yeah, it's amazing. What Eddie's done is he's figured out a way to. It's submission only, so they go after it, right? But when it reaches a time limit, if it reaches a time limit and there's no submission, then what they do is they start off in compromised position, sort of like wrestling. You know, in wrestling, one guy would start down, one guy would start up.
Like the referee's position.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have the option of 2 positions. Either you take the back with over-under, just over-under, you know, not a choke locked in, but just the back with the hooks in and over-under, or spider web control, meaning arm bar. The guy's defending the arm bar lying on his back. You're inside control, and you have the arm hooked, and your legs are across, and you start from there. And so either the person gets a tap, or the person on the bottom escapes the position, and then you count up the amount of time. So you do it in I think there's 3 rounds of this, and if someone taps, then the other person has an opportunity to tap that other person, and whoever taps the quickest, like if one person taps the person within a minute and a half, the other person does it in 30 seconds. That person with the 30-second person would win. And if there's no taps I think it's 3 rounds of these submission attempts, then they count up the amount of time it took the person to escape. So if one person escapes like 30 seconds quicker, then that person would win. That's how Gary Tonin wound up losing yesterday.
What a fair way to do it.
Yeah, it's a smart way to do it too, because it ensures that you're going to have exciting situations. Because if 2 guys are just locked up in front of each other and no one ever gets to a bad spot, you're not going to see any action. But if a guy's on a guy's back and he has over-under and they start from there, that's a dangerous spot. And so you're going to see exciting stuff. So it changes grappling from being this thing that can really wind up like Polaris. They had those matches like Gary Tonin versus Husamar Palhares. Great matchup, but it went to a draw. AJ, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
The audience wants a winner. They want a clear-cut winner.
Yeah.
Plus, it gives the athletes a chance to showcase their skills.
Yes.
That's what people want to see.
Yeah.
They want to see the skill sets showcased, and you don't get to see that because sometimes these guys are so damn good that they neutralize each other.
Yeah.
It doesn't always make for a great fight. 2 really good fighters. I mean, you've seen this in the UFC many times. You think, oh, my God, this is going to be so good. And it's like, oh, man, this is really boring because the guys just basically neutralize each other because they're just so good.
They're so good, they cancel each other out.
They cancel each other out.
That is a problem, and I think Eddie's come up with a perfect solution with this format of putting guys in bad positions in the last stage of the match. And,
sounds like a fun thing to compete in. It's
excellent. And it's on Fight Pass now. It's on UFC Fight Pass. So now, a lot of people are getting a chance to see it, and they put videos on YouTube and all that jazz.
So this is at the pro level pretty much?
Yeah, $25,000 for the...
It might be kind of fun if they just did like a grassroots thing.
A grassroots thing?
Yeah, just for like, amateurs to go in.
Yeah, it would be a great program.
Blue belt, purple belt, brown belt.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
I agree, yeah.
I don't know what the logistics of a tournament like that might be, but I'll tell you, it'd be fun to compete in something.
Yeah. Eddie's done 6 of them, and they've gotten better and better, and yesterday's was the biggest one, and especially because it's on Fight Pass now. But he's really figured it out. He's figured out how to make this an exciting thing to watch for people who are on the outside looking in.
Well, speaking of that catch wrestling, a lot of people don't realize that pre-Civil War and just post-Civil War, wrestling was the most popular sport in America.
Really?
People used to sit outside the telegraph offices to listen to the results of a lot of these old school wrestling matches. It was way more popular. Well, first of all, baseball was in its infancy. It was like a Civil War era sport that was invented. Basketball was still only like 2 schools, I think, were playing it. They actually used real like peach baskets.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a physical education guy came up with a way just to, like a game, so just a conditioning game.
Wow.
That was the origins of basketball.
Little did you know,
and football
equals
was like
sneakers and
football
cars,
was like
TV
this
shows.
big watermelon-looking ball. But wrestling was the most popular sport in America.
And it was real wrestling, though.
It was the
wasn't
old
like,
school catch.
Yeah.
Guys like Georges Hackenschmidt and Frank Gotch and
Yeah.
Farmer Burns and even up to the era of Strangler Lewis. They were still doing real wrestling, and then of course they started getting into more of the entertainment business.
Well, how did it go bad? Because it's really fascinating to me that wrestling itself is such an unbelievably difficult sport. Like if you watch amateur wrestling in the Olympics at an Olympic level, it's unbelievably difficult, and it's exciting and fun to watch, but there's no professional venue for it.
Well, until the UFC came along.
Right, but that's fighting, though.
Yeah, it's fighting.
It's
It's
like for
fighting.
people who just want to wrestle, they can't.
It
You
is
know?
a great basis, though, for a lot of different things.
It certainly is, no
I-
doubt
I-
about it. But it's just, to
I don't
me,
yeah.
it sucks that there's not a professional, avenue for actual wrestling.
For actual wrestling.
I mean, think about all the things that are on television, golf or whatever. There's this massive professional venue for it.
It sounds like Eddie Bravo, though, was given one.
For jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu is obviously very different than wrestling. I mean, just wrestling itself, getting the pin and scoring points for takedowns and all those different things. I mean, there's something to be said for that as a sport. Maybe not. It's maybe some of the best as a martial arts for completing a fight, for finishing a fight, wrestling with the rules that are involved in amateur wrestling. But to me, the guys who get really great at wrestling, like I would like to see them have a professional avenue, like a way to go from college and then compete as a professional wrestler. And so, not that there's anything wrong with WWE if you're into that shit, but I would love it if it was an actual competition. You know?
Actual, real,
Yeah.
honest to God, not choreographed,
Yeah.
nothing thrown. There was an attempt for a while to actually come up with a professional wrestling league.
Couple
but,
attempts.
Yeah, but it kind of fell by the wayside.
Could you imagine if that was the case with basketball? If you played basketball in college and basketball was just like really like people watched it on ESPN, it was this big deal, it was in the Olympics and basketball. But then when you went to pro, everybody had to dress like a vampire. You threw glitter onto the thing. You know what I mean? Like you have music when you introduce, you have matches in a cage. People are like, what the fuck happened to basketball?
There are some countries where they actually do have real pro wrestling based on basic, not exactly Olympic rules, but like, each country has their own little native martial art folk style wrestling. Mm-hmm. Some of the African countries do this. It's huge in countries like Somalia and what was the other country? I met this guy that travels the world for the International Olympic Wrestling Federation, and he was just doing just looking at all the different aspects of wrestling all over the world. I met him when I was in Turkey. I went to the Turkish National Championships of oil wrestling. These guys are all pretty much like professional level dudes, man. And this is the one where they wear these buffalo hide trousers that are tied off at the knee, and then they basically just pour a bucket of olive oil over themselves. And then they go out in a grass arena and they just wrestle. And it starts out with like 50 dudes. And then, half of those guys lose. And then they just keep going till there's like 2 guys standing.
Yeah, why oil? What happened there? Where'd that go wrong?
During the Ottoman Empire, they had a standing army. Basically, the Ottomans pretty much conquered the world. So they had all these young soldiers with nothing to do. And these guys were getting into some problems. You got to keep young men occupied. So they came up with this, but at the same time, these are ferocious warriors. You don't want your guys hurting each other. So they came up with this idea of coating themselves with oil to make themselves slippery so you can go after each other, like a rabid dog, but no one really gets hurt.
Wow.
And also it helps build heat tolerance because these guys were wearing armor in the freaking desert, hundreds of degrees. I mean, like 100 degrees. And it really builds up a tremendous heat tolerance. When you get used to training like that.
So training covered with oil
Yeah, I mean,
builds up
just,
heat tolerance?
you can't, skin can't breathe, man. It's pretty brutal.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see that way. So, like, you just, like, your pores really can't sweat that good.
Nope. And those guys, and they were able to keep themselves in tremendous shape.
That guy's got to work on his technique.
One of the things they do is reach inside the pants
And grab
to
each
get a
other's
grip,
butthole.
and it looks a little gay.
You think?
But I'll tell you something. I actually put on the kiss bit and the oil, and I wrestled with the former junior national champ. Dude, he was almost breaking my ribs with the lever. He would come inside the waistband of your trousers and put his elbow in your spine. And the idea is to flip the guy over and expose your belly button to the sky. If you turn the guy over, you win.
Yeah, but the guy on the bottom, this is a terrible look.
It looks a little terrible.
He's like literally waiting.
Let's put it this way: it would never fly in America.
Well,
But
why is there a gap between the waist and the and the body?
it doesn't.
and the
It doesn't
pants?
start that way. It's
Oh,
really
okay.
tight, but the oil over time. But these guys are unbelievably strong, and you can see the physiques in these guys are like, oh my god, and they are national heroes. They're rock stars in their country.
But they're grabbing each other's packages, no?
No. There's no sexuality at all.
Allegedly.
Well,
Listen, there's no way you can get your hand deep in there like that and not have some shenanigans. He's looking at his friend going, my whole hand has
but
escaped
you
me.
see how he's holding the leg and the pant?
Yeah.
That's used as leverage to flip the guy over. So
Or-
it's almost like jiu-jitsu in a way.
Or he's making sure that the guy can't get away while he's got his hand
Yeah, well,
deep
that's
in his
part.
butt.
That's part of it. But I'll
Yeah,
tell you,
come on, man. You can't have this.
I developed a keen respect for it, though.
Yeah, I get it from
I mean,
that
the guys are
perspective.
athletes, but
it's
no,
definitely
when
difficult.
it fly in a Western culture, no.
Right, but you've done this before.
But these are strict Islamists too, and any kind of homosexuality is punishable by death in these countries. So
But you also know that doesn't stop it. Like people
Well-
that have gone over to Afghanistan have talked about Men Love Mondays or whatever the
Yeah.
fuck they have over there. Where there's a lot of
the Mamba,
Yeah.
man, boy, love, I
super
get it.
common,
It's
that they
not
have
uncommon.
gay relationships. Like there was an article that was written about one of those gay websites, like an app, like a Grinder or something like that. And this guy went over to some forbidden country, where some Islamic country, and fired up the app, and it was just getting pinged left and right by all these gay dudes that are trying to hook up.
Get out of here!
Yeah, well, that's forbidden fruit, my friend.
Oh my God!
You know how it is.
I mean, I'll get oiled up and put on a buffalo hide and wrestle, but it's about as gay as it gets for me, man.
Yeah, but if you were gay, you'd be psyched.
I
If you
guess
got
I
to that
would.
spot, like if you were gay and somebody like. Put it this way, all right? Being a heterosexual man, if a girl wanted to get all lubed up and wrestle, and you could stick your hand down her pants,
Dude, I'd be there.
exactly. So,
Matter of
that's-
fact, after the show, honey, you got that
that's something
coconut
set
oil?
up. What's up with the tarp? Nothing. Don't worry. Just lay it down. Roll out the vat. You got a vat of oil.
Put your Lululemon tights on.
Yeah. Those pants look like they're sturdy. At least it looks like it's difficult
They're
to
buffalo
rip.
hide. It took me 15 minutes to get them on.
Really?
Because they're so stiff, they stand up by themselves. It's almost like armor. And I literally had to oil up my balls and my ass and my thighs just to slide in that thing, man.
Again, there's some things. See, come on, this is not good.
That's called a waist drag. He's actually grabbing the front, like grabbing the jiu-jitsu belt.
That's what you could call it.
He's going to pull him down into a takedown.
It's called a cock holster in my world. Right there, look at that one. Boom. Look at that. That is outrageous.
He's lucky he didn't break his neck, man.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm sure when you're dealing with people being real slippery like that, that's part of the problem with actually grappling. Look at this. Hey, my friend, he's my friend. That's like the core. That's the version of like in prison, they hold on to your pocket. That's what it is. These guys looking at each other. There are no girls. What do you want us to do? That's what they're saying. In my country, there's no girls. We just oil up, throw down. But it is a very difficult way to grapple. All jokes aside, that's really hard. And in doing so, like you have to develop. Like you learn that about no-gi as well. And especially if you try to do no-gi with no shirts on.
my
There's
God.
a big difference between no-gi
like
with
that
a rash
one year
guard.
in Abu Dhabi, it was like crazy. The thing also about that was it was very safe for the soldiers to go full at it. I mean, what do you do with a standing army with no war to fight?
Yeah.
What the hell do you do with these
Football.
guys? But at the same time, you can't have them hurting each other. That was the so-called origins of the whole sport.
Yeah, there was an NPR podcast on Radio Lab about the origins of football and how football was created, and that was one of the reasons why it was so appealing. It was like a way to compete in war without actually having war. I mean, you had objectives, you have goals, and instead of bullets and bodies, you had a football.
It's like team wrestling almost.
Sort of, yeah, in a lot of ways.
And in a way, like if you think of the, let's say the rugby scrum, it's kind of like the old shield wall, isn't it?
Yeah,
When
sure.
they formed the shield wall. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's basically learning to work together, and there is grappling. I mean, you're basically throwing guys down pretty hard too.
Yeah, I think whenever you have young men and you have competition, there's always going to be this desire to dominate. Like young men always want to dominate other men. And that's just always going to be the way it is. So they've figured a way to have these workarounds that are acceptable by society. And then, in fact, it became the biggest sport in the country. I mean,
Team warfare, man.
the team warfare, like the NFL, it's the biggest sport in the country.
But, it's interesting. In the early football days, you just didn't see the injuries like you do now. I mean, there would be elbows, knees, shoulders, like always, like all tough boy sports where you're throwing people to the ground. You're going to get hurt. But you didn't get the concussions.
Right.
And one of the theories I had was, and you don't see it in rugby or rugby union or Gaelic football or any of that.
You don't see it as much.
Not as much.
But you definitely do see
You
it,
definitely
right?
see it. But it's not epidemic like in the NFL. I think the helmet became a weapon.
Yeah.
And they start using the head as a weapon.
Yeah, definitely.
And, it'll
Not
be
just that,
interesting
it
to
gives
see
you-
what the NFL does now with, all these lawsuits and all these injuries. Did you happen to see Will Smith in that movie?
Concussion?
Concussion?
No, I didn't, but I keep hearing great things about it.
Yeah, I got to check that movie out because I heard he did a hell of a job.
I don't know
hell of
what
an
they
acting.
can do to mitigate it.
Well, they do have a new kind of helmet now. I heard that just came out that really reduces the sloshing of the brain.
How
in the brain
does it
pan.
do that?
I think it's some kind of gel or something in the helmet that kind of like a soft kind of thing that takes the absorption. The helmets are
Right.
hard.
Yeah.
So when you get hit, your brain still sloshes. It's just like, when you get hit with headgear on, it doesn't really stop the brain injury.
No.
You just take more hits because there's no surface injury.
Well, not only that, a lot of people think it actually accentuates the movement of the brain because of the fulcrum effect. Like
The
if
fulcrum
you
effect.
catch someone with this larger object and the head twists.
I believe there's a new helmet now that supposedly is gel-like that it takes the blow, but, it saves the...
Yeah, we're
the
seeing
brain.
it here. Jamie pulled up this video. It says 0-1 believes it can reduce the chances of a player sustaining a concussion. And this is interesting because the helmet itself sort of gives and expands. And
I would love to see that happen because I love pro football, and I would be thrilled to see it that they come out of a way that these guys can still play the game without suffering those horrible injuries.
I agree. But honestly, I feel like the real option is probably no pads, no helmet.
Well,
the same
like
thing with
rugby.
MMA.
Or like the original football in the U.S.
Well, I think with MMA, one of the things that saves fighters versus boxing is that you really can't tee off on someone the way you can with boxing gloves. With boxing gloves, you almost can have no concern with whether or not you're going to hit a forehead or you're going to hit an elbow, unless you have small hands or weak hands. Like it's much more rare that boxers break their hands than MMA fighters. But even MMA fighters, I think they have an unrealistic amount of protection on their hands, and it's just to protect their hands. Like I still, to this day, I'll get interviews. Like I got interviewed after that the guy died overseas really recently, and they were saying, "Do you think that they maybe should have bigger gloves, or maybe we should make people wear headgear?" I think the real answer is no gloves. Not only no gloves, no wrist taping. Because I think that one of the more difficult aspects about punching someone is that your wrist joint moves when you hit things. And it makes it way harder. I mean, you have to really concentrate to keep your fist completely tight, make sure that your wrist doesn't move when you make impact. And you have to make impact with the first two knuckles primarily. Otherwise, you could break your hand. And
Well,
I think,
like the original UFC.
Yep.
I was one of the original investors. I told you this.
Mm-hmm.
I actually threw my little bit of money in there and was Hoyce's conditioning coach for those first 3.
What did you have him do back then?
I was actually trying to build his strength as much as I could because jiu-jitsu provided all of the conditioning that he needed. He was doing a lot of work with, just bringing in fresh partners and, and he wanted to stay a jiu-jitsu purist. Although, he used some kicks and so forth just to kind of
Close the distance.
just close the distance, fake the guy out, make the guy wonder, like, what's he doing so that he could get the clinch and so forth.
He would smack guys, too, to
Yeah, he would
open up
smack
things
guys
where
to
you don't run the risk of breaking your
breaking
hand.
the hand. But in all those original UFCs, the strikers all busted their hands. A lot of them did. There was, I think 3 broken hands in that first the first one.
Well, that's realistic, though. And
That's
I think,
realistic. And ground and pound would cease to exist.
Yeah.
You can't just sit there and tee off.
Well, you could elbow people for sure,
You
just
could
as
elbow
much.
people. But imagine hitting someone in the elbow with your
Yeah.
fist or at the top of the head. Ah.
Yeah.
So that whole ground and pound thing would pretty much go away.
Well, just reckless punching would go away.
You would have to have precision punches. You'd see a lot more open hand strikes. You would see grapplers able to secure holds that they can't hold.
Yes.
It might be boring for the public because I think you would see grapplers win a lot of fights.
You might, but I think you would also see a lot better Muay Thai. You would see
Ooh, yeah.
people would have to develop their Muay Thai because you wouldn't see any change in the weapons. The knees, the kicks, the elbows, all would be exactly the same. The only difference would be the punches. So I think a really high-level Muay Thai practitioner would
Would do
probably
really
have,
well.
they'd probably have a really good advantage if they can keep the fight on the feet. If the fight went to the ground, you definitely see a big advantage for grapplers, especially in securing chokes. Because you've tried, I'm sure, to grapple with MMA gloves
my
on.
God, it's just like wearing oven mitts or something.
Especially like rear nakeds. If you try to get a rear naked choke, try
or
to get the hand
even a
behind
good
the neck.
guillotine sometimes is really hard to get it underneath the chin and so
Yeah,
forth.
and especially if you like pretzel grips or something like that, it's just
It's
there's so much
impossible.
padding. There's so much. You create a good solid 2 to 3 extra inches of space that you don't want with all the padding on the gloves, and it just gets in the way. And it's easy for your opponent to grab them and pull them off.
Pull them off. I would
know?
love to see a return to the gloveless MMA.
Yeah,
I would love. I
would
think
too.
it would be really interesting. I'd like to see a league somewhere, where maybe on an Indian reservation or someplace, where they didn't have all the, boxing is the reason why they put the gloves on in the first place.
Sure.
The boxing commissions all wanted, they.
Well, actually, it was Tank Abbott. Tank Abbott was the first guy to wear those gloves. Tank Abbott wore the Chuck Norris MMA gloves, which was before anybody had them. I mean, Tank wore them like, I want to say, it was like early UFCs, because Tank was a power puncher, and he was smart enough to realize, you know what? I'll just tape my hands up, put these small padded gloves on that are going to protect my knuckles, and just mollywop these dudes.
Was that before they went to the gloves?
Tank Abbott was before they went to the gloves. The first UFC that I worked, they didn't have gloves. I was at UFC 12.
And they still didn't have gloves.
They did not have gloves.
Wow,
it was not
okay.
mandatory.
Okay.
It was optional. Vitor wore gloves, but he didn't have to. I believe he also wore shoes. No, he didn't wear them in those.
Yeah, I
he wore 'em
remember
when he
that
fought.
some of the guys were still wearing the wrestling
He
shoes.
was barefoot. He wore them when he fought Vanderlei. That's him versus Oleg Taktarov.
Okay.
See, so Oleg has no gloves, but Tank has gloves on.
Interesting.
Yeah, Tank was. I'm pretty sure Tank was the pioneer of wearing those kind of gloves, and I think that they would call those. I don't think they called them MMA gloves back then because I don't think they had the term MMA. But the original gloves were Century gloves. The Century Martial Arts Supply Company
for hitting the heavy bag or the speed bag, or
something like
whatever.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the design came from. Like the design of MMA gloves didn't come from someone sitting down and saying we need the perfect glove for mixed martial arts. No, they already had a model that was really not really necessarily designed for MMA, and they just sort of applied it to MMA, and it became the standard. There's a lot of like really sloppy shit that's in MMA still to this day that shouldn't be there. That's only in there because it was in there in the beginning. The 12 to 6 elbow, which I harp upon all the time because I think it's so stupid that if you go down from 12 on the clock to 6 on the clock with an elbow, it's illegal. Even if you hit someone on the thigh, which is so stupid, it's illegal. And the reason why it's illegal is because the commissions, the athletic commissions, saw people breaking bricks on those karate demonstrations. Jesus. You can't do that. You would kill people. So that's why that's illegal.
Not understanding that they weaken those bricks.
Right. Well, and also the reason why gloves are mandatory is because somehow or another they erroneously believe those gloves protect the fighters. They don't.
Not at
And so,
all.
but knowing that you, I mean, I think if we got a room full of athletes and fighters and martial artists, and we all had the discussion, we said, let's just have a show of hands. How many guys here think that the gloves protect the opponent?
No.
Everybody
You
have their
can punch
hands
so
down,
much
right?
harder.
So everyone who knows, 100%, I think, across the board. I mean, there might be a contrarian or two that would step in and say, hey, personally, I'd rather get punched by a guy with a glove than no glove. But most people would say, fuck that. Most people would say bare knuckles probably safer for everybody involved.
Safer. Am I correct? Did they not take the headgear off Olympic boxing?
They did.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's a good move. I think it's a very
think
good
so,
move.
too.
You don't
Yeah.
get hit as much when you not have headgear on. I used to hate headgear sparring because your peripheral would get screwed up, especially kickboxing. It was really dangerous because you'd get hit with a jab and you wouldn't even recognize the kick was coming because they're coming over your shoulder until whomp, it's catching you in the side of the head. Your peripheral would get all fucked up. It would close your peripheral quite a bit, and I just always felt like I got hit way more when I had headgear on.
And it's interesting. The little bit of boxing that I did do, I always noticed I always kind of had a dull headache after boxing with headgear. And when I didn't have the headgear, I didn't have that same headache. It was weird. Even back then, I could never understand why my head always hurt more after boxing with the headgear on.
Because your brain's squishing around it anymore.
Well, now I know. But I mean, at the time, I didn't put the cause and effect together. I
Which
just
is-
know all I knew was intuitively I hated wearing headgear when I would train.
Well, what's interesting when I've brought up this to people in high places, they always have the same thing. The public would never go for it. The public would think it's too brutal. People would think it's too brutal. I'm like,
I don't know,
but
man.
what have we created? What have we created? Because we created something in MMA. Not me. I obviously didn't have anything to do with it. But what MMA is we have a completely new sport over the last few decades, and this completely new sport has redefined the way people think about combat sports and fighting. Right? Okay. Well, why don't we be honest about what's happening, and why don't we be honest about how come you can shin kick a guy in the face? I can shin you in the face, full blast, but I can't punch you with a bare knuckle. Do you know how stupid that is? Because a guy like, take, someone who's a power kicker like a Vitor Belfort or something.
Oh, my God.
The amount of power they could generate from a kick in that raw shin to your face, it's so much more than anyone can ever punch. I mean, like multitudes more,
It's like
3,
a
4,
baseball
5 times
bat,
more.
basically.
It
like
is.
a baseball bat.
But we don't have to wear shin pads. How come we
No.
don't have to wear shin pads? Because the public's not used to shins being covered. It's all it is. I really honestly think that the smartest move would be to ban tape. You can't tape your wrists, and bare knuckles.
I think so, too. Well, if you go back in the early era of boxing, where it was all bare knuckle, you rarely saw knockouts. Those fights used to go so, like, 30 rounds sometimes.
Yeah.
All the, like Jack Johnson and those guys.
Do you think that's why they used to fight like this too?
I
They
think
would
so.
like smack
Yeah.
each other with the knuckles like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Or do you think they just didn't know any better?
I think they knew better. I don't think the mighty men of old, there's not too much we could probably show those guys. Imagine if we went in a time capsule back to Sparta, the first professional army in Europe, right? Do you think we could actually show those guys anything about
Yes.
fighting or warfare and
I'll
stuff?
fuck all those dudes up. Send me back. No, no. Honestly,
I bet
martial
there's not,
arts.
man.
I bet they'd get fucked up. I really do. Because when I look at the martial artists from 1993 that were competing in the UFC, and then I look at the martial artists of today in 2016. Look at John Jones. Do you know what the fuck John Jones would do to UFC 1? I mean, you know how ridiculous it'd be if you send John Jones into UFC 1? He'd be like, get that guy out of here. This is not fair. Like, he's doing a totally different thing. I think the martial artists of today, like Demetrius Johnson, who I think is the best ever.
But we're still
He's
talking modern. Let's go 2,000 years ago. You put John Jones in the gladiatorial arena.
You don't think he would fuck those guys up?
I think he'd be a hell of a gladiator.
I don't think
good
anyone
fighters.
would have a chance. I don't think they would know what they were doing.
I think they knew what they were doing.
Really?
Yeah, I
Well,
really
how
do.
come they didn't know in 1993?
A lot of this information had been lost.
Right, but even jiu-jitsu, which jiu-jitsu
This
has
was like a
evolved.
resurgent of like old stuff. I mean,
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like the Dark Ages, you know, where they, like in medieval times.
But they didn't have the ability to share information like they have today.
No. There's no internet or
Well,
anything.
yeah,
Like that.
that's one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu is at such a high level today. Like, there's all these like viral BJJ, which is one of the ones I follow on Instagram. There's a bunch of them I follow on Instagram where they'll have like moves of the day, and they show these moves, and you just I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, and I'll watch something and I'll just go, like the Home Alone guy. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like look at this fucking move. Like every day, these kids are coming up with new moves. Every
moves.
day. I saw somebody figured out how to go. Some dude went from being in a heel hook to catching a guy in a Kimura, and spun out of the heel hook into a Kimura. And I was like, what?
Whoa. That's
Like,
pretty amazing stuff.
What did you just do? Like you watch it, you're like, how did he? And you just got to replay it over and over and over again. There's so many of those now.
But let's go back to what we were just talking about. In ancient times, your ability to fight was a life or death thing. Mm-hmm. You know, you were actually fighting to the death.
Right.
We don't have that.
True.
Unless but usually in the military it's with shooting and guns and stuff like that. You don't see guys fighting. I mean, it could be hand to hand, but for the most part, these guys were trained warriors that would fight hand to hand. That's why I say when you're fighting to the death, you're damn good at what you do.
If you live.
If you live.
But if you don't live, you don't get to really learn anything.
Yeah, but
You know what I mean?
but there's plenty of guys that did live.
Yeah. But
And so my point is that they were well trained and they really knew what was going on.
I think there's some good points on both sides. I think there were certainly some incredibly tough people back then, for sure.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I'm sure the pain threshold was unbelievable.
But I think there's also this longing for nostalgia that a lot of people like to apply to like the ancient martial artists and the ancient fighters, and they like to look, oh, those guys, boy, if they could fight, today, like if you could get this guy. Look, Jack Dempsey, who's a hell of a fighter and an amazing boxer and just an unbelievably tough man, wouldn't last one round with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson in his prime would have ran through Jack Dempsey. He would have ran through all of them. He would have ran through Gene Tunney. He would have ran through all those guys.
Of course, he ran through everybody in modern age too. So,
But
I mean, is that because he was Mike, or is it because those guys were really that bad?
Well, it was also
Because he made a lot of modern guys look pretty shitty.
He certainly did, but he had the benefit of having all of those guys on film.
See,
he had his version of the
I
internet.
agree.
What he had is his version of the internet, which was Customato. And Customato, I mean, he might not have got him on Reddit or showed him all the funny memes on Instagram, but what he did do is he played him these films, these black and white films of Sugar Ray Robinson, of Jersey Joe Walcott, of Rocky Marciano. And he got to watch these old school Jack Dempsey tapes, and he got to emulate their techniques and understand. And Customato would go over them meticulously, different positions and different ways to encounter different styles and different ways to move to get better angles for counter shots. And he learned from all those techniques in a way those guys really didn't have the opportunity to do. They had to train, they had to learn from trainers, they had to watch other people do it, but they didn't have the benefit of having a library of film that spanned decades.
You make a very strong point. Did you happen to catch him in Ip Man 3?
What is it?
Ip Man 3?
No, what is that?
The Wing Chun guy, Ip
okay.
Man.
Is it one of those crazy kung fu movies?
Yeah, but Mike Tyson had a...
Oh, that's right. I saw the previews
Dude,
for
he
that.
looks scary as shit.
He's always scary.
Even to this day,
Yeah.
he looks like he could still... if he just trained for 6 months or so, he looks like he'd still step in there and take somebody out.
Well, he definitely looks like he's still somewhat active. There was a video of him hitting the bag recently for some shoot for something that he did, and he starts off slow, starts getting loosened up, and then he starts teeing off in the bag, and you're like, oh Jesus!
Oh my God!
Like he still fuck people up.
He would still fuck people up. Joe, you would still fuck people up.
I'm trying not to.
I'm still haunted by that spinning back kick you did in your garage that time. Your freaking banana bag bent in half, man. My ribs just hurt just watching that, man.
Well, kicks are always going to be more powerful than punches, and I think that kicking technique is one of the few things that is a little bit behind in MMA in comparison to some of the traditional martial arts, especially like the spinning kicks and straight kicks. Like the round kicks are pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. If you look at the round kicks of like the best Muay Thai fighters and the round kicks of like the best jiu-jitsu guys like an Edson Barboza, I think Barboza's right up there with pretty much anybody. And as far as like kicking technique in the world, but spinning techniques, straight techniques like turning side kicks, there's a little bit of lost knowledge in those.
Not too many guys know that, man.
Yeah.
Matt Serra used to have that awesome spinning back fist, man.
Yes.
Wow,
yeah.
that caught by surprise. Am I correct? You were the one that taught GSP that spinning back kick. Am I
Well,
not?
he knew how to do it, but I helped refine it. he actually came to me, John Donaher, who's like one of the best jiu-jitsu coaches in the world. He's the guy who's in charge of this. They call it Donaher Death Squad. He's all these guys out of Henzo Gracie's, like Gary Tonin, Eddie Cummins,
Yeah,
all
New
these
York.
animals.
I had a chance to talk to
and the
John.
young man that won yesterday, I think his name is Gordon Ryan, I think his name is, who won EBI. Can you find out what his name is? Young kid. He's 20 years old. He won the EBI tournament yesterday. But Donaher and I were having dinner, and GSP wanted. He asked me if I knew anyone who, because he knew that I came from a Taekwondo background. He's like, "Do you know anybody who's a really good Taekwondo guy that can show GSP the fundamentals of the spinning back kick or the turning side kick?" Yeah, Gordon Ryan, young kid, 20 years old.
Wow.
Won the EBI 16-man tournament.
What's the I stand for?
EBI?
Yeah,
Eddie
Bravo.
Invitational.
Invitational, okay.
And so Donaher asked him, and I said, well, I could show him some shit. Like, I know it's going to sound ridiculous, being a comedian and just a commentator.
Dude,
like,
you're just, that's just your disguise, man.
Well, it sounds, even to me, ridiculous. To me to say to John Donaher, who's one of the best jiu-jitsu teachers in the world, hey, there's a guy that I know, his name's me. It's just
Don't
just
sell
ridiculous.
yourself short, Joe.
Well, I'm not selling myself
I've been
short.
to your house and trained you a few times. You're a beast. Had it been another time, I think you probably would have been a hell of an MMA fighter yourself.
Maybe,
people ask me that all the time, and I say, Joe, probably. I mean, you're a superior athlete. There's no doubt about it. You got the fast twitch muscle fiber. You got the power. I think had you had a chance, let's say maybe 10 years prior to when it started,
Well, that's very nice of you. I don't know.
I'm not being nice. I'm being honest. You're a really athletic, strong guy.
Well, I certainly would have competed, in MMA like I did in kickboxing and Taekwondo. But totally honestly, though, I've always been terrified of brain damage. I knew too many people when I was young that I knew were punchy. It scares the shit out of me. It still to this day scares the shit out of me. That's one of the reasons why I tell anybody, if they're even thinking, they even have one foot out the back door, if they're thinking about getting out, get out. Just get out. Because there's going to be some animal in there that's not thinking about getting out. There's going to be some crazed young psychopath who's only thinking about putting his shin to your face. And he's probably going to do it.
And sooner or later it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I lived in Philadelphia for many, many years, and Smoking Joe Frazier used to be down in my neighborhood sometimes. The poor guy could barely put two words together.
Yeah,
you would
he
say
was
hello
gone.
to him, and you didn't even know what he said.
Yeah.
It was just really sad
He was gone.
what
And
happened to a lot of those guys.
I've seen it. I've seen it in my time in the UFC, and I saw it in my kickboxing days. I saw it with guys when I went from Taekwondo to kickboxing. I spent a lot of time in boxing gyms, and I got to watch a lot of guys get beat up in training, and over the course of just a few years, like 3 or 4 years, I could see deterioration.
And see, that's why jiu-jitsu and submission wrestling is so much fun.
Yeah.
Because you can pretty much go full tilt, really spend yourself, get a nice workout. No one necessarily needs to get hurt.
Right.
If it hurts, even if it's highly uncomfortable, you just,
Yep.
that's it.
Yep.
Provided you got let's go.
Mm-hmm.
You always have to have trust with your partners. But that is one thing you can do well into advanced stage. And it is a great anti-aging tool if you go at it in the right way.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you brought up earlier when it comes to joint manipulation or joint mobility and just flexibility and mobility, I think it's very important that people realize that if you want your body to be healthy, you have to use it all the time.
You have to use it all the time.
You can't have any excuses. Like
Old men actually have to work out more than young guys. I got to work out every day, even a couple hours.
Every day?
Just to maintain. Yeah,
7 days a week?
Yeah.
Really?
Now, it's not hard.
Right.
I'm not doing high intensity every day. High intensity twice a week so I don't burn out. Even younger guys, especially if you're involved with any kind of sport, you got to be really careful that you don't overtrain. Overtraining is epidemic amongst grapplers, jiu-jitsu guys, even MMA guys are just chronically burning out. But, 2 hard workouts a week is enough. And every day you got to do plenty of mobility. And I like to do plenty of breathing exercises, walking, cardio. And I do some static stretching. But it's enabled me to still, I can still hold my own in the mat. I surprise guys sometimes when we get on the mat and roll around. At first they start babying me, and then they say, "Oh well, old Steve, he still got it going there." And then they start upping the ante a little bit. Of course, at the end, I'm usually the one tapping. But
How is your shoulder? I know you were having some shoulder issues for a while.
I still got some issues with it.
Did you ever get it looked at by a doctor?
I did. There's a big old bone spur in there just from doing silly, stupid shit, not tapping quick enough. Had a couple injuries to it, It started back in college, actually. So I don't do any overhead pressing or anything anymore. I can still do Hindu push-ups and things like that. I can still do dips.
Well, you still do those shield casts with clubs.
Not so much because
No?
I can't travel with that stuff. So I
Right.
pretty much went to body weight and isometrics and so forth. A lot of mobility stuff. But I would here's a good resource for your listeners. Any of you guys out there listening that have shoulder issues, go and buy the book "Shoulder Pain: Its Solution and Its Prevention" by Dr. John M. Kirsch. He was a former orthopedic surgeon who used to do surgery for a living. That's how a doctor can either cut you or give you medication to mask the symptoms, but it can't do anything to really help you. Well, Kirsch found that hanging with a brachial hang cured almost every type of shoulder ailment. Would get people out of pain.
Well, explain a brachial hang because you just
It's
made
a pull-up with the palms facing away.
Okay.
Shoulder width. I usually don't use my thumb or finger.
Okay.
My thumb, just a
You don't
hook.
grab it like you would grab a baseball bat.
Just like a monkey
Right.
grip, we call it.
Which is what you would do for a grappler anyway. You never really grab it.
like
with your thumb.
a Americana holder,
Right.
And you just hang, and it stretches out the coracoid bone, and then the humerus has
What
a little
bone
bit.
is that?
It's like a little bone in the shoulder that what happens is as you get older, it starts to. In fact, bring it up, that book, Shoulder Pain: Its
We
Solution.
need to
and
make a
Prevention.
T-shirt that says "Bring that up, Jamie."
There we go.
already been
This
thinking about
book
it.
is
Shoulder pain, the solution. Prevention.
shoulder impingement, rotator cuff tears, labral tears.
Damn,
the
4.5
cartilage tear.
stars on Amazon, 135 customer reviews. That is a strong endorsement right
Dude,
there.
I'm telling you, man. When of course, part of my problem is it's hard to find a horizontal bar sometimes when you're traveling.
Mm-hmm.
They take all the pull-up bars out of the playgrounds.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe poor Johnny's too obese to pull himself up. God forbid he'd feel bad about himself.
Does it have to be this way?
Yeah, it got to be a brachial hang.
So it has to be palms
And-
facing forward.
Yeah, and you
hang-
let the shoulder
Not like this.
Let the shoulder come out of the socket, and you just hang passively until your grip starts to get tired. You can do it multiple times. You would be absolutely amazed how good your shoulders will feel from doing that.
So full arm strength or full
Yeah, you
arm
just-
locked out.
You just completely,
like this?
yeah, and you just
So
completely.
not like this, like you were doing before.
No, completely relax.
Okay, so you just hang.
Just hang, and just let the let the humerus come out of the socket and hang.
So what is it doing? It's just
It's
like
just,
relaxing
it
the
just
impingements.
opens up the joint and gives the humerus more ability to move. Even with the bone spur I have in the shoulder, when I hang regularly, I have zero pain.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And this guy stopped doing surgery. This is a guy that made his living doing surgery. Now he doesn't advocate shoulder. He says this works better.
wow.
This is an orthopedic, board-certified orthopedic guy. And he shows the Quarry study, where he did a study with old folks. I'm telling you, it feels really, really nice. Really, really, really good.
So pull this.
And I use this for all my clients. I do a lot of online personal training, fat loss diet programs and such. And all my guys that have shoulder issues, I get them hanging. And, yeah, there he is.
Interesting.
I'll tell you, Joe, if you're having any shoulder stuff going on right now, just start hanging every day, even multiple
Wow.
times. Your shoulders will feel good.
That's
I know it
amazing.
sounds counterintuitive, like it's too simple to be true, but it's one of those things that is true.
Well, I had some tears in my shoulder, and I was having some pain, so I finally went and got an MRI. Apparently, it had been dislocated, and I never even knew it had been dislocated. From jiu-jitsu.
I don't even want to see the damn pictures,
And I had a labral tear. I had a torn biceps tendon, and I had a labral and rotator cuff tear too.
You have any spurs in there? Any?
I got a bunch of shit going on in there.
Yeah.
But
well, and anyone that's played hard boy sports like we have all our lives, you're going to get that shit.
yeah,
But I'm telling you, what Kirsch found, it didn't matter what the source of the injury was, the relief is profound when you do that daily hanging. It's just that amazing.
well, what I have done is get stem cell shots. I got stem cell shots in the shoulder, and it's incredible.
Wow.
I mean, what the healing. First of all, I had all this clicking and weird shit that was going on there. All that shit went away.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, you throw the hangs in there.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm hanging.
Yeah.
I wish I could hang right
It's
now.
good for you.
I'd like to do it right now while we're doing the podcast. I'd like to hang.
I need to find some kind of portable device that.
What about one of the ones that goes in front of a door, like those ones that you do in a door
Oh,
stop?
that'd be great, but I'd have to buy one in each city and then just dump it.
That's annoying. You're committed to this, or you were saying before that you might be thinking about Maui as a base?
Well, I am slowing down just a little bit. I've been doing this since about 2005, I think.
Well, when I met you, you had a truck,
Yeah, I was living in a van, a camper
and
van.
you're like, I can't be bothered with this fucking truck.
And I really liked it. But then I started traveling. What the hell do you do with your RV? You can't
Yeah.
just park it somewhere. You got
Right.
to store it.
You got to find somebody you like and
And
leave it at their
you
house.
got to turn the engine over.
Mm-hmm.
You got to maintain. Mice get inside a lot of these RVs and eat the electrical wiring up, and it totally destroys your electrical system.
Really?
Yeah,
Mice?
abandoned vehicles. If you just sit it, little critters get in there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not uncommon at all. So what the hell do you do with it? So I finally just sold it. Talking of the power of the internet, I sold my camper van to a guy I had never seen. I was in Germany. He was in San Diego, and the van was up in Seattle. I sold it to him sight unseen. Just sent him pictures. I was very honest. I had a bunch of shit wrong with it. I told him every single thing that was wrong with it. We agreed on a price. He wired me the money. I mailed him the title and the key because I traveled with, I kept the key and I had the title with me. I mailed that to him. He went up and got it and drove it back down to San Diego from Seattle.
Wow.
The power of the internet, my friend.
That's amazing.
I put it on Craigslist and boom. I got I had a few people bid on it. And if you would have told me, even 20 years ago that I'd be making a living on the internet,
Well, essentially, you make a living doing not just seminars, but you do have a lot of online stuff.
A lot of online stuff, yeah. Once I understood the power of the internet for doing online personal training, wow.
Well, a lot of people found out about you, and me included, because of the internet. I mean, I found out about you from researching kettlebell exercises, and that's how I got some of your early stuff. And also, I knew about you because I knew that you were one of the first American Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts.
One of the first.
Yeah.
Helson Grace is first to be sure. But that I think there was a couple guys the Machados had given, but I was like that first tier of actual Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guys. And then Horian and Master Elio had the Gracie instructor training program. They were concerned that, of the teaching quality. There was a lot of guys out there teaching that probably shouldn't have been teaching.
Yeah.
So they had a specific educational style, like how to teach the moves. And I was the first person to graduate from that instructor training program. It was really good.
Well, I'm sure you're aware now the controversy of this Gracie University, the thing that they're doing online. They're doing.
Yeah, the Suns got a little carried away with that blue belt. I'm not real thrilled with that.
Well, there's one guy who's giving away brown belts online.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Do you mean a Gracie?
No.
Oh,
no.
okay.
I don't even want to say his name.
Okay.
But he's a pretty respected guy.
Really?
And I read on the Underground that he's giving away up to brown belt online.
How could you possibly respect that?
I mean, the only way I would think
Unless
that it
he
would
came
make
and
sense,
tested, physically tested and proved himself.
That's what I was going to say.
I have seen guys that have trained pretty much from the internet. I went to Tahiti. I was hired by a group of grapplers to prepare them for the Society Island Championship. It was very popular. Grappling is a traditional sport amongst the Polynesian peoples. And I went to Tahiti. I stayed there 3 months. I trained these guys for the Society Island Championships. And the guy that was running it was still a white belt. And he was a prison guard there in Tahiti. Big guy. And unbelievable grappler. He outweighed me probably about 50 pounds, yet he was very soft, relaxed, technical. He had never actually had a teacher. He learned it all watching online on the internet, speaking of the power of the internet.
Wow.
And I loved the way he trained with me. He was very respectful, even though I was, like 30 years older than him and much smaller. We had some good training. I just gave the guy the blue belt right in the spot.
Wow.
I mean, there's no way that guy was a white belt. I've done that at different places where people don't have a good instructor, where they are under-promoted, and I get in the mat with them, I see what they can do, and I say, wow, okay, this guy is under promoted. He just hasn't had a chance to have a legitimate guy give him a promotion.
Who's that guy rolling with? Did he have
he had
training
a whole
partners?
group of students, and he was the teacher basically. Cause,
White belt teacher. Wow.
Yeah, white belt teacher, and his guys were good. They were really, really good.
Well, if you just really pay attention to the fundamentals and you really understand the principles behind each individual technique, you can learn a lot online
You
today.
can learn a lot online.
But not brown belt.
No,
I just feel like
I
there's
think it's a little.
you need someone there, right there with you.
Blue
for
belt.
that.
Almost anyone can get
Yes,
that.
I agree.
I mean, I heard a really funny analogy one time from, I think, one of Carly Gracie's black belts, or maybe it was a health guy, but he said basically a white belt is a sperm, just the seed.
Right.
And by the time you're 4-degree white belt, you're like a little baby that was just born. And then the blue belt is like a little toddler, like just a little kid. Doesn't even know what he doesn't know yet. But by the time you're like a 4-degree blue belt, you're like a child. And then the purple belt is like a teenager.
Yeah, like a dangerous teenager.
Yeah, you're a little, you got the technique, but you just, little.
They're starting to know that they
little
can do it too. Purple belts, I feel like, it's like some of the most dangerous.
That's a dangerous guy because a lot of times he's still using a lot of power, but he got the technique too. And then, of course, by the time you're a brown belt, you're like a young man. And, basically a brown belt is a black belt in disguise. It's just, once you make brown belt, you're going to make black belt unless you just outright quit.
Yeah.
And, and then a black belt's like, a grown man. But for me, I don't know about you, but once I got the black belt, I felt like a whole new layer of learning was taking place at that point.
Well, you never stop learning in jiu-jitsu as long as your body still
Never.
works.
Never.
Like we're talking about these new moves that are constantly coming out. But then, Jean-Jacques Machado has this really interesting take on things. He said, the more you know, the less you use.
The less you use.
He goes, I might know 10,000 techniques, but to win a match, I might use 2.
Yeah. Well, Salo said that one time. He says, look, I know 30 ways to pass the guard, but I only use 2. I have a backup move A and then backup plan B in case it doesn't work. And I think that's just the way it is, man.
Well,
They're really
especially
good
that
guys.
Salo game, that
Solid,
intense
man.
pressure, solid top game.
He uses his body weight so well. When I used to train with Salo, he could tap me out on the cross side without even putting a submission hold, just crushing me with his weight. And he's not, he's heavy, but he's not that heavy.
Right.
He just would rob your breath. It was just the most horrible feeling. It's like being waterboarded or something, man. It was like, oh my God, the intense
Yeah.
pressure. He learned to do that, But yeah, I think for as far as moves and so forth, probably one of the most outstanding clinics I've ever witnessed was when Jean-Jacques Machado was in the second Abu Dhabi. I actually went over to the Arab Emirates, and I wanted to support Salo and Hoyler at that time, and I couldn't believe the clinic he put on. All closed guard too. That's
Yep.
another lost art. You don't see too many guys use it. Kron uses a good closed guard. But Jean-Jacques put on a clinic. Unbelievable, man. He had that super fight with Mario Sperry. I never saw such a... He almost put Sperry out, man.
Yeah, Jean-Jacques is no joke, man. He's always been a beast. He's a really brilliant person, too. Like as a human being, he's a great guy. On top of being this amazing jiu-jitsu practitioner, he's just a beautiful human being.
And from that closed guard, he only used 4 basic moves. Triangle, arm lock, omoplata, guillotine. And, of course, some sweeps to back it up. That was it.
Yeah.
And the way he put them together was like a machine gun attack. But it was like the guy in the guard was working so hard just not to get caught. Never saw anything like it. It was like, wow. It just goes to show you that the basics done well, that's all you really need.
Yeah. Well, Hickson and Krohn. I mean, Krohn to this day still just uses the basics.
Unbelievable, man.
I mean, but it sounds derogatory almost. Like someone like Minotauro once got upset that Vinny Magalhaes was talking about his jiu-jitsu, and he said it's very basic. But that's not bad.
No,
Basic is not bad at all.
Someone said that about me. I'd take it as a compliment,
Yeah.
personally. Basic is best.
Just honed to a razor sharp edge, all of the basic techniques that I think there's almost like Roger Gracie's another example of that.
Another example.
One of the best jiu-jitsu artists in the world, but very basic.
What year was that where he won his division and then he tapped everybody in the open division with an X choke from the mount?
I don't know.
He used that one takedown, that one throw he does. He mounted every single, and these were all professional level, best black belts in the world. He tapped every single guy with the basic X choke from the mount.
crazy.
That's the first thing you learn, right?
Yeah.
Your first couple months in jiu-jitsu, you learn basic X choke. The guy tapped the best in the world just doing basic stuff.
Well, there's such an advantage in jiu-jitsu to being tall and long.
Oh, what a nightmare.
It's a giant advantage because the tall and long guys have so much leverage.
So much leverage.
And also the ability to get techniques and lock them up, where a short, stubby-armed person like me just doesn't. My arms don't connect in spots, like with Darce chokes and things along those lines, where you can't. They have more space.
They have so
like
much
their arm
space.
goes deeper. They can.
But you'll see people with every type of physique type do well in jiu-jitsu because, you know, speaking like fireplug kind of build, I mean, no one was shorter and stubbier than Solo.
Right.
Yeah, he's like one of the most winningest jiu-jitsu guys ever in the world.
True.
Wow. You know, he just maximized, he adapted the jiu-jitsu to his physique.
Or Husamar Palhares, another
Yeah.
perfect example.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little
So
tank.
that's the cool thing about the game. You know, it doesn't matter how you're built, big, tall, short, you know, whether you carry a little extra weight or you're really skinny. You can adapt the jiu-jitsu to your own body.
So we were talking about you moving to Maui.
Yeah.
So we got off track a little bit, but
Yeah.
why Maui, and what makes you?
Well, you're going to laugh at this because it's not scientific, but but it is. I use an astrologer. This guy is amazing. He used to be a Stanford professor. Can I say his name?
Sure.
Okay, his name is Robert Koch. His website is starcenter.com. I've been using this guy for a few years. When I first heard about it, I thought, this is such bullshit. I'm never going to do this. You know, the person that turned me onto it was my girlfriend, and she says, listen, man, just do a reading with this guy. Just do a reading. And I'm saying to her, you mean you take advice from a guy you've never met, and you're going to listen to this guy? So I gave him my birth date, the time of birth, where I was born. That's it, plus my name. He read my life to me. I was like, how are you doing this?
Well, maybe you got on Wikipedia.
Maybe. But this was an impromptu call, so I don't know. All I know is that it's based in mathematics. He believed, you know, like the Pythagoreans, you know, they believed everything can be explained in numbers in mathematics. He was a former Stanford professor. He came from academia, and he gave it all up to do this basic astrological. But even more important, he's like an old philosopher. He's read all the ancient Greek philosophers, and he's also, have you heard of this mental science?
Mental science.
Mental science. Basically, your reality is based on your thoughts, and your current reality is based on the sum total of all your positive and negative thoughts. Thoughts are a vibrational pattern, and the vibe you put out is the vibe you attract. So if you're like a real negative person, always, you know, saying negative statements and feeling a lot of negative emotional things, you're probably going to have a pretty shitty life. And if you're thinking like a higher thought, higher, of course, the highest would be love. That would be the highest vibration. You're going to have good things happen to you. That's the basic, in a nutshell. It's much more complicated than that. But
So like The Secret, essentially.
like The Secret, right, which is a great little book. Well, anyway, Robert developed his astrological based on mental science as well as basic physics. And so anyway, he read my life. He looked at all the places in the world because, you know, you put off a vibration like an energy vibration. It can actually be measured, right? Yours would be as identifiable as your fingerprints or, you know, like an eye reading, iridology or whatever. And there's places on the earth that put off a vibration also. And the place that vibes best with me is anywhere in the South Pacific, but in particular, Maui. And he really honed it down to the town Lahaina.
Did he try
Maui?
to sell you a house there?
Nah,
I know the spot.
Yeah.
67 Clover Lane.
Yeah, there we go, man.
Let's go online, look at that. Oh, the house is for sale.
Oh,
What are
how
the
about that?
odds?
Damn, Robert, you're amazing. No, but so anyway, Maui is supposedly the best vibration for me.
For you.
For me.
So explain to me how this guy goes about. So he finds out what your address or what your date of birth is, what part of the world you're born, what time you were born, and then what's
He has some
plugging
kind
in?
of computer program with all his charts and numbers, and he plugs all this stuff in. And then I ask him, like, well, what is it you're actually looking at the computer? And it says, it's just basically, he says, I can't make exact predictions. He said, if I could make exact predictions, I'd play the stock market and, you know, but, I can come up with high probability for certain things happening. And also, he's looking at, You ever hear of the collective consciousness? You know, you have your higher consciousness, you have your subconscious, but then there's a collective mindset. It's like everyone's emotions and moods and thoughts, right? Right now, it's one of fear. You know, everyone's so afraid. I'm traveling all over the world, so you can literally feel the fear. Right now, Europe is all up in arms because of the terrorist attacks and things, and people are really scared with the ISIS and all this. There's like a real fear mentality. The problem is if you give in to that fear mentality, you actually create the very thing you're afraid of because you're basically concentrating on them.
Right.
It's like a form of visualization, right? If you're always, like, it was like the shark thing we were talking about. I probably would create a situation where I'd meet a shark if I went swimming in the ocean because, you know, I put too much energy into that.
Yeah, me too. Whenever I stick the snorkel, the goggles underneath, I'm like, where is he?
Yeah, exactly.
Where is that
So
fucker?
for you and I, we would probably possibly actually attract a negative situation like that. Just saying.
Okay.
But anyway, there is a collective mindset. You can even feel like different countries have different moods. When I
Right.
get off the plane, I can actually feel that. I'm pretty sensitive to this. Like in Russia, it's real somber, kind of almost depressed, you know? A place like Maui is like, oh my God, I just feel so happy.
Because they're so lucky. They're in paradise.
They're in paradise.
Yeah.
You know, the mood is much higher, the aloha spirit, as they say.
Aloha
So he
spirit.
told me that was the single best place. Other places were a place in Alaska. It's a place near, where was it? A little town, I can't even recall. And then another place was
What part of Alaska?
in
Near
Turkey,
the coast?
on the coast.
The coast
yeah.
is not bad.
Yeah.
Like near Anchorage.
Yeah, it was near Anchorage. It was a little town.
You'd
Just
be amazed at how like moderate the climate is too.
everyone says it's quite nice there. So, you know, but still, Alaska, Turkey, Maui. Alaska, Turkey. I think I'll go to Maui.
Yeah, it's not a bad.
It wasn't a
choice.
hard choice, you know.
Well, it's a very relaxed environment in Maui too. Like the place is relaxed. It's a relaxed place to live. You know, as far as like the people that live there, they're really cool and chilled out. And,
Totally
you
chill,
know.
man. My webmaster lives there, Chris Crook. Awesome guy. So I always have business to do with him. He's been doing a great job for me. You know, my
What if the
website
guy
and all
told you need to live near like oil mines in South Dakota? Would you be like less reluctant or more
Well,
reluctant? Rather,
that. That would be interesting. Oil mines near South Dakota.
you know what I'm saying? Like someone that sucks. You need
But-
to live right outside of, you know, like some fracking fucking compound.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think someone with a really negative mindset might have, you know, be attracted to a place like that.
So-
but I try to keep the vibe heavy, and I mean light, and at a higher level. And you know, you can attract goodness and abundance in your life, just like The Secret. That's a good book for people to start.
Well, it's-
that U.S. Anderson was quite an interesting guy.
Yeah, the power of positive thinking for sure is real. I mean, for sure there's a lot of good that can be done in your life if you look at things, if you have a positive approach. You could look at things in a good way and have those things have positive attributes, have benefit in those things. Or you could look at the exact same thing, exact same moment in your life and just decide that this is the end, life is terrible, you're a loser, and people have these deeply grooved patterns that they've carved out in their consciousness over years and years of approaching different situations with very similar reactions. And it's almost like automatically, like something happens to you, everything always goes wrong for me. God, my life sucks. I'm such a loser. But if you compared your life to someone who's born in Bangladesh or Ethiopia or some place where people are like really genuinely unfortunate, they'd be laughing at you. They'd be like, you live in America and you're white and you don't have cancer. Will you just shut the fuck up? You know, like what's wrong
Perfect
with
example of that would be George Costanza's character, right? On the
Seinfeld, right.
Right, the guy that no matter how good he had it, he always would manage to screw it up somehow, and things would always turn bad.
Yeah.
But we've all had the experience, right, of being in a room, and someone would come into the room, kind of a dark vibe, and the whole room vibe would go down.
Sure.
But then we've also had the experience where a guy would come in who was a real bright, positive thinking person, and everyone's mood would just lift. That's that collective consciousness you got to be so aware of, because not every thought that a person has is their own. You know, it can come from the outside. We don't manufacture all our own thoughts. You can be influenced by negative thinking from other people or positive thinking from other people, and you got to start to be very conscious of the kind of thoughts passing through your brain and reject those negative thoughts. And it's not easy. It's like a discipline, like working out.
It really is, and it's also one of the more important aspects about surrounding yourself with positive people. When you surround yourself with positive people, you find them to be inspirational, you get excited, you all think along the similar lines, you support each other and help each other, and it benefits everybody. And you develop like a real keen sense of like love and community. Whereas if you're around people that are constantly negative, like you're in conflict all the time. And
All the time.
You're wearing out. You're constantly getting exhausted, too, by the stress of...
And I have a theory in that, too. And it's not just my theory. I mean, it's part of the mental science we were talking about. I believe that those people are the ones that attract all sorts of degenerative diseases and you know, bad things happen.
Well, it certainly can play a factor, especially stress. You know, stress has been shown to be devastating to your immune system. People that have really stressful lives and don't get enough sleep and are constantly negative and thinking about things.
Important. Sleep is more important than diet. You know,
You think
people
so?
that are overweight, man, I'll tell you, you could be in the best diet in the world and still having a lot of struggle with weight if you're missing your sleep. I've seen that many, many times, even with my own clients, because I do a lot of fat loss programs. And, you know, guys will be eating pretty decent and not losing the weight. And then, you know, I'm looking, they're only getting like 5.5, 6 hours a night and they're really stressed. You know, you have a tendency to really hold on to water and your body will hold on to that body fat. It's hard to lose.
Yeah, that is an interesting aspect of a lack of sleep, is that your body holds on to fat.
It really holds on. And also fluids, you know, what they call false fat. It's not even fat. It's just like all
Swollen.
this fluid just gets trapped in the tissues. It might as well be fat because it just is unattractive and just is uncomfortable, you know.
So did you bother investigating what this guy is doing about this astrology stuff? Did you bother looking into it or just like listen to him?
Well, his website is quite interesting. His
Right.
rating list is like fantastic, you know, for people.
But
that
what
want-
is the astrology itself based on? It's based on the position of the stars, the time you were born?
Yeah, it's a heliocentric. The old astrology was Earth-based because they believed the Earth was the center of the universe. He created his own heliocentric, you know, with the sun as the center. And then it's just basically...
This guy created his own astrology?
He did.
How does one do that? How does one create their own astrology? And what I could almost, and I'd say almost understand how someone could imagine that if you looked at, you know, thousands of years of data, you could figure out that people develop certain personality traits if they were born during certain times, and you could sort of try to align those times with the constellations in the sky that are moving and the, you know, just the way the Earth wobbles and where the stars are at any given moment. That kind of almost makes sense. But this guy doing it on his own, like, how's he doing that?
You know, I don't even pretend to really understand it. What sold me? I didn't have
He
to.
said Maui.
Yeah, no, he said Maui. He did. I didn't have to understand it because he basically read my life to me like a book.
Yeah.
It says there's no freaking way that he could have known this information.
Like, what kind of stuff that could he not have known?
Just the way my life went, man. You know, like my relationship with my parents and the relationship with my ex-wife and the way my marriage went and the way my marriage dissolved. And like, you know, just all sorts of stuff like that.
Like, sort of like a tarot card reader
Yeah, but a tarot card reader,
is bullshit.
yeah, exactly.
And this is not bullshit.
I don't, let's put it this way. He's told me not to do stuff, and I've done it. And it never has worked out for me, man.
Right. But isn't it possible that one of the reasons why it didn't work out is because he told you not to do it? And that you
Could
thought
be.
about it, and that your negative thinking.
And I had a negative thinking.
Just like we talked about?
Yeah, like in the brain. All I know is every time I go against him, it usually doesn't work out. And when I listen to the guy,
Right.
it almost always works out.
Right, but this is this sort of contrary. This goes along with what you just said. Like, you're almost not giving yourself advice. You're not following your own advice. You literally were just talking about thinking about things in a
Being
negative
afraid
way.
of thinking,
Yeah.
like things are predestined.
Right. So this guy has sort of created these scenarios that you shouldn't
Well,
engage
here's an
in.
interesting thing. Like, he's told me something on my chart, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I'll call him a day or two later, and it's completely changed.
Your chart's changed.
Yeah, like something changed. And I says, well, wait a second. 2 days ago, you said I shouldn't do this. Now
Yeah.
you're saying it's okay? He claims, like quantum physics, right? If you change your thought or your vibration level, he actually sees a change on his chart on his computer.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, this makes zero sense.
Well, I'll give you another example of how this might work. I had this guy that was a professor of, he was actually a PhD in biochemistry and board certified nutritionist. His name was Dr. Gregory Ellis. And he used to take hair samples, right? And he would test these things out for like various deficiencies, this, that, and the other thing, right? And he was into this electric, basically, I am attached to that hair forever. And as my body would change, the hair sample would change, even though I was no longer connected to it.
Change how?
It would no longer show the deficiency when he would retest it.
What?
I know, man. It's
I don't
some
buy it.
pretty crazy shit.
I'm not buying it.
He was a hardcore scientist, man, PhD.
Maybe he just had a tumor. This doesn't make any sense. I don't buy that. That doesn't make sense. Like your physical hair is not going to change.
Would actually change.
I don't believe it.
Well, I had trouble believing it myself.
But did you see it? Did you know for a fact? Have you
Well,
read into it? Have you looked at data? Have you seen it tested and peer reviewed?
I didn't really actually understand the process.
Right, but
but I knew him not to be a liar. I'm
sure he's not, but he might just be delusional. See, looking at something like that, you're talking about something that defies physics. It defies science.
But now with
defies
quantum
everything.
physics, that completely threw physics on its ear.
Right, but
we know that electron can occupy more than one space, which now opens up the whole door for parallel universes, all sorts of stuff. Stephen Hawking just recently claimed that the black holes are like a door from one universe to another. So there's all this crazy stuff that just put everything on end, what we know about physics and medicine and everything else.
I believe that.
There's an
I
actual
understand
book
that,
called
but-
Vibrational Medicine that they actually talk about this. Check out that book.
Right,
man.
but see, here's the problem. You're not testing subatomic particles when you're testing hair. When you test someone's hair and you're testing hair for various mineral deficiencies and vitamins, those things aren't flying through the air and going back and forth. So if your hair is deficient,
he was actually testing it the vibrational level of the hair.
what?
Yeah, like
What does that mean?
like it, like everything puts off like like an aura. You can photograph it with Carillion photography. You can actually photograph the energy. Everything has an aura. Even this cup, this table, your body.
An aura that you can actually prove, a real aura, or an aura that someone who believes in crystals.
They've actually taken pictures of it. You've heard of the Carillion photography?
No. How do you spell that?
Fuck. How do you spell that?
Carillion
Yeah,
photography?
Carillion photography.
Carillion photography.
Yeah. They actually have taken pictures of this, and he can actually measure, right, the energy coming off this, and it matched me.
Well, Jamie's a photographer. Jamie should know about Carillion photography. You ever hear about that shit, Jamie?
I can't say I've ever heard of it.
If
I'm
you ever
looking it
try
up
to
right
bang
now.
some chick who's really into crystals, I bet she'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, man. Check it out. Anyway, it's pretty but listen, it works for me, man.
Well, I understand that it probably has its applications.
power of the mind, man.
Right, the power of the mind. So, but is it a big giant placebo effect?
I don't know. I do know this. In a recent study, they found that placebo drugs work about 40% better than real drugs.
What test is this?
There was a thing that
They didn't give them
I read
placebo
a whole-
mushrooms.
I read a whole. They were giving people like regular medication, from pharmaceutical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that placebos worked way better. in
Well,
many cases.
but for what application, though? You know what I'm saying? Like when you say that the placebos worked way better for
pain relief and
Okay.
stuff
Well,
like
pain relief makes sense
Yeah.
because a lot of pain relief you can actually do with your own mind. I don't take pain pills, and
Nah, me
I
neither.
I got knee surgery and I didn't take a damn thing. I didn't.
I've just read so many negative side effects of the ibuprofen and this kind of stuff.
Well,
I don't
ibuprofen
wanna
is
take
probably
any of
the
this.
safest of all of them, and it's still not good for you. But my fear was always I just knew too many people that got addicted to pain pills, and I'm like, well, what's the worst part about pain? It just doesn't feel good. Well, isn't that just okay? Can't you just deal with not feeling good while you heal? Like, at least now I know I'm in pain because I'm healing.
An awful lot of pain is, a mind thing. Like
How you approach the signal.
Yeah, like that back pain guy, Stu McGill.
Sarno.
Yeah,
Dr.
it was
John
Sarno,
Sarno,
yeah, but
yeah.
also that Stuart McGill. They were looking at X-rays of people's backs, and people with chronic back pain a lot of times would not have any physical reason to be in back pain, right? And then they were looking at pictures of guys that were active like us, and their backs are a mess, all sorts of slip disc, and the guys are not in any pain at all. I must be afraid to look at an X-ray of my back,
Yeah, right. They tell you to feel
bad.
bad.
Yeah, right. If anybody would have a messed up back, it got to be me. All the falls and throws I've taken over, 45 years of wrestling and jiu-jitsu.
Little tiny micro injuries.
Oh my God!
Constantly.
But yet I'm not in any pain at all.
Yeah. Well, pain is an interesting thing in that I think the mind can regulate pain. So,
that's what I meant by the
placebos.
pharmaceuticals.
But it doesn't make sense with other applications where we find like anti-epileptic medications or things along those lines where you just know for a fact there's a physical effect on the body that these drugs have, and that they don't understand placebo effect. That's one thing for sure. They know that placebo effect is real and it does work in certain circumstances.
It works really. There's the power of the mind.
Well, especially depending upon who is receiving that effect and how much the person believes in that this thing is going to heal them.
And if people, what I find, a lot of people are really into the body, but they're not really working with their mind or their thoughts or anything like that. It takes a lot of discipline. It
does, but it also, you really have to clearly establish what's woo-woo, what's nutty, crazy, crystal bullshit, and what is an applicable modality. Like what can you really do as far as meditation, as far as things that are repeatable, things that people have shown to have a beneficial effect on your consciousness, a beneficial effect on the way you approach life. And
that is pretty much individual.
Mm-hmm. It is.
You really have to, like you say, do self-experimentation.
Yeah.
Like what I just talked about might sound pretty damn weird to a lot of people, but so far it's been working for me.
Well, as long as it works for you.
And I feel good about it.
Yeah.
And I don't feel it diminishes my life in any way. No one's taking advantage of me. I feel like confident and really good about the type of information I'm getting, and I found it work. But like you say, power of the mind.
Well, if you just approach it on that level, if you say, okay, this guy's going to give me advice, and I'm going to find this advice to be beneficial, and I'm going to follow through with it, and I'm going to use that as a guideline, and I'm going to have good confidence in that these choices are going to be correct because of this guy and his knowledge. And my problem is I've seen too much bullshit. And so whatever beliefs I might have had, like even 6 years ago before I started this podcast, a lot of them have eroded just under scrutiny,
Yeah, no, I hear you. I always advise people, give the guy a call. The first session's free. If you think he's a crackpot, never call him again.
Yeah, but I mean, what I would want to do, my problem with someone like that is I would want to go down the rabbit hole. I would want to find out, okay, how are you making these distinctions? Like how did you devise this method? What's going on behind the scenes? What do you base this on? How do you know? What are you saying? Like, what are you saying? When you tell someone, hey, don't take that flight to Germany because something bad's going to happen, like, who the fuck are you? How do you know that? You don't know that. And that's the reality is you tell someone don't do something. If you tell someone, hey, Steve, I really don't think you should go to Florida. Oh, fuck, the guy says I shouldn't go to Florida. You're already starting a cascade of negative thoughts. And that, to me...
Well, that is a very good point, and I have thought about that,
Yeah, well, there's not a fucking person in the world that can tell you that if you pick up your car keys and drive your car to Minnesota, something's going to go wrong. So if this guy's telling you that, I call bullshit. Not only do I call bullshit, but I think that kind of stuff is kind of dangerous. Because
what he's looking at is like... we're really influenced by the collective a lot, like people's general moods and so forth. Mm-hmm. He gives me like a little heads up. He's able to see that.
How so?
It helps me. Like if I want to do a seminar on a certain date, and he'll look at the charts, and he'll just say, energy's pretty off. Okay,
but what does that mean? The energy's pretty off and looking at the charts. What does that mean? What does that mean by
maybe
looking at
he can
what
kind of
charts?
predict that I might be tired. I don't know. I haven't seen these charts, but I hear him clicking in the background on the computer.
That guy's on Facebook. He's looking at pictures. He's going on YouPorn. He's checking out girls' asses.
Just give him a call, man.
No fucking way. No.
It's free.
Yeah, I don't care. Time is not. Time is valuable. I don't think there's a guy in the world that can look at a chart and tell you where the energy of the world is.
I think there is, man.
Really?
I've experienced it.
So you think that this guy can look at a chart?
Right?
I do know you. Yeah, that's why I'm questioning this. I think you're a little wacky guy who lives out of a suitcase.
Yeah, maybe that's enough to
crazy.
Right.
I think you're a beautiful, brilliant man. But if I was your friend, and I am your friend, but if I was there while this was going down, I would be asking this guy a fuckload of questions.
I do find he's a really good guy to talk to about stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
He's almost like kind of like a psychologist, a psychiatrist in a way. Is like in ancient times, the scientists were philosophers, and all the great, even Alexander the Great, and all the great Roman emperors, they would have their own private philosophers to advise them on things. Marcus Aurelius, for example. And they would listen to these philosophers. I kind of look at this guy almost as a philosopher.
As an advisor.
An
in some way.
advisor. And I listen,
I can buy that.
I haven't always taken, I have gone against the guy.
Like, in what way?
I just didn't listen to what he said.
What did he say?
He'd give me advice, don't do the seminar this weekend.
Why would he tell you not to do a seminar?
I'd
See,
say
this is bullshit.
It would be a better day to do it on this day.
Oh, fuck. Why?
And
Because voodoo? Because you threw some chicken bones in the ground and one of the sticks is pointing south?
I have done it, and it would be not such a good one.
Maybe it's
Kinda
because
shitty.
he told you that it was going to be a bad one. You had it in your head, then you went and did it.
Maybe.
Has he ever told you not to do something you did and it worked out awesome?
No. That's what made me think.
Well, it's because you're thinking about it. I mean,
Maybe
this is
he's
what
onto it,
we
man.
talked about with negative thoughts.
Maybe.
Maybe.
You know-
More likely than a fucking chart that you can tell you the energy of the universe doesn't want you to fly to Miami. That's crazy.
There's some pretty brilliant guys out there that know stuff that we don't, man.
Yes, there's definitely some brilliant
And there's
guys
a lot
out
of
there
things
that know
that-
stuff that we
and-
know.
and
But this
there's a-
one guy that's
and-
got a computer that can tap into the collective energy of the universe and tell you where the energy is and what you should definitely not go to Ohio. I've looked at your charts. Fuck you. That's what I'd say to that guy. Fuck you. Fuck you, crazy man.
Haven't you ever gone and done a set in your show and it just kind of bombed? It just didn't work out that well.
If anything ever went wrong, there are a bunch of reasons why it went wrong. And I could look at all of them. I could say, maybe I was tired. Maybe I was overworked. Maybe I didn't prepare well enough. Maybe I have new material that's not worked out. But it's not because I shouldn't have gone to Ohio. You know what I'm saying? It's not because some guy shows me a chart and the collective energy of the universe is off.
But just maybe there are people, this guy in particular, that could potentially, right, have seen that.
See what?
The set going bad.
But wouldn't you want to have a
by
method?
the way,
but hold on a second.
an awful
Stop,
lot-
because this is very important.
Well,
wouldn't
here-
you want to have a method that you would clearly understand how this guy's making these arbitrary decisions and choices? Because you're talking about bullshit. You're talking about like voodoo. All right? And if you're talking about, if it's not bullshit, then it's science. So if it's science, it's repeatable, and you should bring it to people that are experts, and they should analyze it and study it. But for this guy to just sit there and click on some things and tell you don't go to Ohio, that's bullshit.
Well, all I can say is it's worked for me so far. The proof is in the pudding as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, if your mind decides that something will work out well and you have full confidence and your plane doesn't get hit by a meteor and everybody gets out alive, and at the end of the seminar or the end of the trip that you took, you say, hey, that guy's advice really turned out well. It really did. What you've done is you basically give yourself a little mental shield to go into battle with.
Well, there we go.
Well, that's what it is, but it's not real. Do you know what I'm saying?
Plus,
like
I
you
like
could
this
have
guy.
that mental
Well,
shield.
Isn't it, though?
Well, it
is real.
It is in the sense that it was effective because you had confidence in it and because you approached all these events like you had confidence in it. But is it real in that there's a guy who actually can look at a computer and tell you whether or not you should go somewhere based on the energy of the universe? No. No, that's not real. It's definitely not real. I will tell you with 100% confidence it's not real. Do you know how I know it's not real? Because there are millions of brilliant people out there, millions of scientists, and you talk about quantum physicists and theorists and all these different people. They would have heard of this. If you're talking about a guy who's making a computer program, they would analyze this. It would be something that people would be talking about. If this guy really believes it, he wouldn't just be holding on to it in Maui. He would be telling the world, listen, there is a way where you can accurately predict events. There is a way, and it would be up to peer review. People would be studying it. They would be putting out papers on it. It would be something we would understand. We have figured out a code, whether it's like the Fibonacci sequence or something like that, a code to the universe. And if you follow this code, you will have predictable, repeatable events.
How do we know that there aren't a lot of people doing it?
This is a problem. This phrasing that you're using. How do we know? It could be. It could be. That's not enough to base your life and any decisions. And this woo-woo bullshit that comes along with tarot card reading, with palm reading, with all that stuff, it's all the same. And it's all one person telling you, first of all, he's telling you stuff you already knew about your life, okay? This is the strategy of charlatans. I mean, this is what tarot card readers do and palm readers do and fortune tellers do. They tell you shit that you already know. And they tell you it through leading questions. And they tell you it through a bunch of signs that they can tell from being really good at reading people. Then they go on to tell you what's going to happen or what you should and shouldn't do. And in doing that, you can plant some thoughts and seeds of doubts into people's head. This is the reason why people used to think that someone could put a hex on you. Because if I put a hex on you and you believe I put a hex on you and you leave this room and you're like, I am fucked, Joe just put a hex on me, and you run around in life, that will be overwhelming your thoughts. And if you allow that to happen, it will be true. You can manifest bad things by having bad energy and bad ideas. This is exactly what you were talking about earlier, but this is done through like a strategy and a repeatable pattern.
Well, all I can say is
maybe it works.
Maybe it
Right?
works, Joe.
Come on, man. This is crazy talk.
Nah, not as crazy as you think.
It's definitely crazy.
Okay. Well, I'm certified crazy.
Well, it's just if there's a method to it. Like if this guy says, "Oh, here's the reason why." The reason why is, there's like the golden sequence of the universe, and you can tap that golden sequence into a computer, and it's based upon all these different factors. If that guy has information like that, and he's just holding on to it in Maui or wherever the fuck he is, and
No, he travels like I do.
yeah.
He's kind of a nomad.
By the way, someone who went to Stanford and who's a professor, it doesn't exclude them from being out of their fucking mind. Dr. Oz is on TV, and he's telling people about weight loss medication. That's a
Oh,
miracle.
I know.
And that fucking guy had to go to Congress about it. Guess what? He's still on TV. The guy's on TV
Still
telling
giving-
people about
yeah.
miracle weight loss fucking berries.
Crazy shit.
It's bullshit. He's a charlatan,
There's
right?
tons and tons and tons of guys out there selling, this kind of stuff. As you know, I'm pretty much an anti-supplement guy. I just
Well, you used to take a lot of them,
I
and then you
took
sort of...
$320 worth of supplements a month, and I didn't notice a damn thing when I stopped taking all that shit. Not
Yeah.
one thing. In fact, I felt better.
That's interesting. Well,
And once again, a lot of this is placebo.
there is some that's placebo
Not a
effect,
lot
but
of
there's
placebo.
also some that's been proven by science to have beneficial effects on a lot of different factors. But, you're a guy who's a healthy, active guy who's constantly eating correctly, and you don't allow yourself...
Extremely strict with the diet.
How do you do that on the road? Like when you're in these different places, and like say if you travel into countries and you might not even speak the language, how do you make sure that you get the right food?
Well, I try to always keep the quality as best I can. But as you know, being a frequent traveler yourself, you can't always get the best quality stuff. Talking about placebo effect, I won't let it get me bummed out. I won't start thinking negative thoughts. Let's say, for example, I have to eat, I don't know, a bag of pretzels or something. I believe I can sublimate any ill effect of that food. Just by being grateful, just by visualizing my body being able to respond well to the food. It's just calories, I see myself digesting it and assimilating it, and I won't let it negatively affect me.
You just look at it as raw calories. You
Yeah,
just
it's
gotta
just
do
raw
what you gotta
calories,
do.
So it's some starch. It's not the best stuff in the world. It's not like I'm going to be eating that as a habit.
Right.
And I'll be fine, because you can work yourself up into like a real negative thing. I'm going to give an example. When I was younger, I had a friend that was taught me a lot about higher mind science. And we were in a restaurant one time together. And this is, I guess, maybe in the late 70s. And there's a guy smoking. This is when people could still smoke. And this guy's blowing the smoke on me, and I'm getting madder by the minute. It's really pissing me off. So I asked the guy if he would please not blow a smoke over to me. And the guy started doing it even more. And I wanted to punch the guy right in the face. And I'm looking at my friend, Tim, and he's totally relaxed, about the whole thing. And I says, doesn't that bother you? Doesn't that really aggravate you? And he said, Steve, you're getting yourself all worked up. He said, I can supplement the bad effects of the smoke by not letting it get to me. He says, all those negative emotions and the anger and upset you're feeling are 10 times worse than any amount of cigarette smoke blowing on you. He says, you're actually doing harm by the way you're thinking about it, as opposed to the actual harm the smoke's doing. And wow, that blew me away. And I'm seeing him so relaxed. And I started thinking, well, that's probably everything in life. So I started looking at food the same way. You know, if you eat something that maybe you know isn't the best quality because there's just no other thing available, well, so what? You'll be fine. You know, you just go back to eating a really, really, good quality stuff after that. It's what you do most of the time is the key. Not what happens upon occasion. But I will say this, as a full-time traveler, I will pack my own food as much as I can. I always carry like a little grocery bag.
Yeah, I was following your Instagram, and your girlfriend got their food confiscated at TSA. What did they confiscate?
A lot of times you can't take anything that looks a little liquidy through the security. Sometimes they'll grab fruit, like going from Maui back to the mainland, all the fruit and stuff, any fresh produce, they'll take. For example, I had a salad, right? The lettuce was fine, but they wanted the tomatoes and the cucumbers off. That wouldn't pass.
What?
Yeah, the Department of Agriculture guy. Speaking of voodoo, right? It was just the craziest thing.
Did you ask why?
I did, but he had no real firm. They never have an explanation for any of this stuff. It's just banned or what? I don't know.
Well, certain flies, fruit flies,
yeah,
and things
I
along
guess
those
I
lines
suppose it
they're attracted to liquids.
could be attracted to the stuff. But usually I don't have too much trouble getting stuff through. And it's funny, some countries are so amazingly lax. Like, where was it? It's Australia. You can take liquids through the security.
You can?
Yeah, you can take water and all sorts of stuff.
But you can't take a dog to Australia. Did you see what happened with Johnny Depp?
Johnny
Depp and his
he's
girlfriend?
still in trouble with that.
Did you see his video that he made?
I haven't seen it, but
It's hilarious.
it must be really fun.
Well, it's hilarious because he Sirius talked through his video. Like, he's an actor. So
Yeah, he's very
he
funny.
made it look like he was being serious, but did so in a way where it's pretty obvious to anyone watching that it wasn't serious. Like, it was so subtle that one of the politicians, one of the main people in Australia, actually had a comment on it. How it's pretty obvious that he wasn't taking it seriously. He made this video.
It's really weird what will go through security and what won't.
Yeah.
For example, in China, they were absolutely scrupulous. I couldn't believe how good this girl was in that screen. She got all my little secret shit. I like, because I do all carry-on now. I don't check bags anymore. I had a little key that's actually a knife. It opened up into a little knife because you didn't need a blade, you always could use a blade no matter where you are to cut stuff or whatever. You just always have a need for it. She found that key. I don't even know how the hell she knew that was a knife. I carry like little survival tools with me. I have like a little flint and steel fire starter sometimes.
Are you starting fire
Dude,
somewhere?
the fucking zombie apocalypse, dude.
Does that ever come up? Does your astrologer tell you that you need to carry that around?
No, but I watched The Walking Dead. There's and that Fear the Walking Dead. Speaking of, creating a mental, But I also have like one of those little drinking straws. Well, I'm in a
You mean
lot
a
of,
filter?
Yeah, you can actually drink 250.
Pond water,
Yeah.
right.
Well, when I saw that, remember the tsunami that hit Bali, that resort? I'm in places like that.
Right.
And I just figure better safe than sorry.
Yeah,
I
makes sense.
I do believe that, my astrologer will keep me safe from these things. But let's just say we would have a situation where the water would be really shitty. Like I've been in like places like Novosibirsk, Russia. Dude, that's like in the middle of absolute nowhere. If there would be any kind of natural disaster or something, at least I know I can drink, right?
Right.
And, I have like a little thing I can make fire. I mean, you never know. Plane go down and I'm surviving in the Andes or something.
Have you ever made a fire with one of those things?
Yeah, I have actually.
Really?
I
So-
practiced. Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could do
Do you
it.
bring kindling with you as well?
Well, you get, there's like a whole little art to doing fire from. It's fun to try those. They call them earth skills or ancient skills.
Well, a lot of people bring like steel wool or something like that.
Steel
with them.
wool with batteries works
Yeah.
really good. I also have a little magnifying glass thing I travel with. I always have a compass.
You bring a compass?
Well, as old school, I learned how to use a map and compass when I was a kid. As a Boy Scout, you do orienteering.
Right.
So I knew how to do the knots, my little thing.
So when you're going to these places, like say if you get an offer to go to some strange place in Siberia, are you reluctant to take any of these, or are you just like anybody wants to do a seminar? I'm open for the journey.
I'm pretty much open for the journey. I like to go to different places, But in China this last time, my God, they were taking my freaking nail clippers. They want nail clippers. They found that little key. They took my little fire starter. How she even knew what that shit was, I have no clue. They must be well trained because she nailed me for everything, man.
Wow. And you get in trouble when they nail you for that stuff in
No,
China?
they just take it because none of it could be considered a weapon. However, I was arrested in Switzerland one time. I had been traveling by train. I had one of those Gerber, or was it Cold Steel? It was like a knife that was spring assisted. Mm-hmm. Rock climbers use it because if you're rock climbing and your harness gets tangled, you may have to hold on to cut yourself free from your harness, right? So you need a knife you can easily open up with one hand.
Right.
So I just liked it. It was a great little knife, and I had been traveling by train and had it in my little man purse carry-on thing and forgot about the damn thing.
Ooh.
So it went through, and they pulled me aside, and they pulled that knife out of there, and I was like, oh, shit. And they said in Switzerland, a assisted opening knife is considered a weapon. And the police took me back. I sat there. I almost missed my plane. They obviously were, going on Interpol and, doing all this bullshit to find out who I was and what I'm doing with this knife.
Wow.
To add insult to injury, I also had like a little credit card thing. It also had like a little teeny blade in it. It was like one of those multi-tools in the shape of a credit card. Mm-hmm. So they found 2 blades in my freaking carry-on. I could have got away with the credit card because they wouldn't have even looked at that. But once they found one thing, they tore my shit apart, man. They looked at everything. Oh, my God. But it's weird. Like Australia, China, you don't even have to take off your shoes.
In most places, you don't have to take off your shoes.
But U.S., you still do.
Well, it's just because that one guy.
Fingernail clippers, all that stuff goes through. Even small knives, they don't even bat an eyelash. Multi-tool you can take through TSA. But they're looking for stuff like liquid and, and any kind of shoes. Electronics a lot of times. I saw them this past time making people prove that their computers could turn on. I saw a number of that. Because, that one dude tried to slip a bomb through...
in a laptop,
And recently, have you traveled lately?
Mm-hmm.
Did you find the security lines were like crazy?
Internationally, you mean, or locally?
No, just even within the U.S.
Seems normal. It's always sucky.
And Maui was ridiculous, and LAX was absolutely awful. That lady got through security and actually boarded a plane with no credentials or boarding pass.
When did this happen?
I read like Bing News. I usually read I don't like to read the actual news because it's always talk about negative mindset. I just look at the headlines just to see, just give me a clue, what's going on.
What should I be scared of? What new virus?
Well, yeah, I never read that shit, but I do like to read travel stuff just to see, what the latest and greatest is, Mm-hmm. And anyway, there was it hit international news. Well, yeah, there we go. She
Crazy
actually
bitch.
got the whole way through, and the word came down because TSA was already under fire, basically just for being incompetent. So this woman got through, and now all of a sudden this will be going on for the next month or two. Mm-hmm. They're just, oh my God, the travel is so delayed.
That's interesting because I've been traveling a lot. It seems totally normal. It always sucks.
Well, I usually go pre.
Mm-hmm.
This last time I took the budget Spirit Airlines. They don't have any contract with TSA, so everybody goes through the long ass security lines. But one of the best things I ever did, I did global entry, and I can just walk through like a freaking rock star when I come into JFK.
Yeah, global entry is nice.
Oh my God, it's so nice. But along with it, you get the pre. And I usually fly business or first class these days, especially for the really long flights. Man, that pre is so nice. No shoes off. Don't have to take off your jacket.
It's interesting
the
how
line
that's
is
changed. It's
really short.
How that's changed over the course of our lives. It used to be you didn't even have to have an ID to get on a plane. I remember that. You used to just hand them the ticket, and you could give a ticket to a friend. That friend could go on the plane instead of you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was the old days.
The old days, man. You could just drive through Canada, no problem. Come back. I mean, it was none of that kind of stuff.
So this astrologer told you to move to Maui. Are you gonna follow his advice? Are you gonna go there?
I'm gonna. I'm setting up a little home base to work out of. I'll still travel somewhat and do some seminars, but I'm gonna set up shop in Maui.
Yeah, because I was thinking, for a guy like you, a lot of people would come to you. Like, it might not be a bad idea to just
Well, Maui would be a damn nice place to attract, right?
yeah, and not only that, but you could set up seminars on a weekly basis and do them literally from the comfort of your own home. You could just have a program where you run people out of Malibu and make a great living, or Maui rather, and go back and forth if you so choose. You could kind of go anywhere. If you did do that and you could establish your own gymnasium and like have like a real gym there, would you start changing your own training? Because I know a lot of what you're doing now is mostly
I'd probably
body
go back to like some of the things that I really, really enjoy, you know?
Like what?
I like the clubs. I like club swinging. I like swinging the light clubs, you know, just as a mobility thing. It makes my elbows and shoulders and wrists feel good. You know what I'm talking about? The little 1 pound Indian clubs? I used to be
The wooden ones?
Yeah,
right?
I used to be quite the expert. You know, I
Yeah.
actually learned that as a physical education major in college.
Really?
As a freshman. As all PE majors had to learn the basic old school physical culture systems, and one of those was the old wooden club system.
Back in the day, huh?
Yeah, that was 1970 when I went through the School of Health and Physical Education at Westchester.
That's interesting that now 40 plus years later, those sort of training modalities are coming back.
Yeah, well, so old is new, right?
Yeah, kettlebells is a perfect example of that, right?
Perfect example. That was an old school training tool. And they came from Germany, by the way, not Russia.
Really?
Yeah, the Germans were the ones that actually established. They called them ring weights in those days. And
No kidding.
A lot of the old German strong men used them.
And it looked the same, like a cannonball with a handle?
Kind of. So there was a lot of really weird designs. Some of them really like circle just on a cannonball. You know, I mean, they used to use real heavy ones in their act. A lot of them were hollow, and you would unscrew it, and they would put weight inside and screw it back on. That was kind of interesting.
Oh, so you could adjust it.
Yeah, like adjustable weights and so forth.
If you had your own gym and you could do whatever you want and lift weights and, you know, what would you, like, how would you set it up? Would you do, like, standard, like, Olympic-style weightlifting type exercises?
I've never been a real fan of Olympic weightlifting. I don't believe that it's the most efficient way to train athletes. There's an awful lot of NCAA strength coaches and NFL strength coaches is shying more and more away from the Olympic lifts. They're finding their athletes just getting too busted up and hurt. You know, even just doing a front squat. Why would I risk $1 million athlete, you know, to teach them Olympic lifting is a hell of a sport. I mean, it takes a lot of coordination to do Olympic lifts.
Yes.
And as you well know, one sport doesn't make you better at another sport.
Right.
It really doesn't. It just causes motor learning confusion. There's no doubt that Olympic weightlifters are incredible specimens. They're strong, they're fast, they're explosive, but it doesn't follow that doing Olympic lifting will make you stronger and more explosive and fast. It's like self-selective. The guys that already have those attributes do well at Olympic weightlifting. So if I take a slow twitch wonder and give him Olympic lifting, I can't selectively recruit those fast twitch muscle fibers and make him a fast twitch guy. I'm probably just going to get him hurt. If I was a wrestling coach or an MMA coach or a football coach, I want to be spending most of my athletes' time out practicing the skills of the sport. That's the most important thing, the skill of the sport. And most of your sport-specific conditioning comes from the practice of the sport itself. Aside from that, I want a general strength training program to make his skeletal muscles as strong as humanly possible. So I'm going to use modalities to do that. And the idea is to keep it as safe as possible. And I see Olympic lifting as pretty doggone dangerous. I've seen a lot of guys bust themselves up, hurting themselves, you know, trying to do it. So I'm not a big fan.
So you're saying motor learning confusion? Is that what the term you used?
Yeah, like sometimes people think that a power clean is like the snap, finish off a double leg pickup throw or something. But it's a completely different skill set. One isn't going to make you better at doing the other.
Do you think, though, that strengthening your muscles and having more explosion and more the ability to close the distance quicker from box jumps and sprints and things along those lines can directly translate to things like martial arts? Like
I don't think so.
To,
it's very specific. No? Yeah, doing a box jump is a whole lot different than shooting a double leg throw. Right. Way different. The best way to get guys really explosive at doing that is just do those things over and over and over again and get really good at it.
That's very controversial, isn't it?
I mean, there's as many guys that talk like me. Mm-hmm. There's just as many guys that would argue to the death the other way.
Right.
But I've done both. You know, as a young boy, I learned Olympic weightlifting from the last Olympic world champion, Robert Benarski. My dad used to take me down to York, Pennsylvania when the United States was still the mecca for Olympic lifting. And I actually learned Olympic lifting down there at the old York gym.
Wow.
Yeah, and I used to lift in my basement. But what I found, even when I was just in high school as a wrestler, that it wasn't really helping that much. And even then, I just sensed like a real danger to my body. Mm-hmm. And wrestling is a tough sport as it is.
Right.
What your training should prevent injuries. If a person needs to foam roll and do massages and is hurting themselves in their supplementary training, there's something wrong. If it's really a good training modality, it should prevent injuries, not cause. So I'm a firm believer in getting rid of all of the dangerous stuff out of your training, because what we do, martial arts is dangerous enough as it is.
That's really controversial, though. I mean, there's a lot of like high-level strength and conditioning coaches that think that strength training and power training and things along those lines actually improve all of your skills as a martial artist.
I've been strength training for 53 years. I didn't find that myself.
Right, but based on your own body and your own life.
But also with clients. Remember, I've trained
right.
literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people over the years. And I didn't find a good correlation. It's just interesting because was it Men's Journal? There was just an article by a guy who is like one of the leading experts in speed training. And he found that the thing that correlates most to your ability to run fast, like in a sprint, was the trap bar deadlift. He tried leg presses, cleans, front squats, all this stuff. The thing that had the greatest transfer into improving your ability to sprint was the trap bar deadlift.
Why is that?
Just the way it positions the hips and the way that the weight is centered. Like instead of out in front of you, where there's a lot of spinal shearing, your hands are at your side, so it's like you're almost inside the weight.
Yes.
And the way you hinge out in that trap bar deadlift.
I'm a big fan of that,
Yeah,
that
I
type
love
of
that trap
deadlift.
bar
That's the only
deadlift.
way I do them now.
They always felt just intuitively like such a damn good exercise.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was just in this month's issue. I think it was Men's Journal.
My only feeling on trap bar deadlifts is I always felt like I didn't get deep enough because the 45-pound plates were so large.
Well, he was saying that it's not necessary to get that much range of motion for sprinting, because your legs aren't really
Right.
bend that much. Anyway, but there's a lot of strength and speed coaches, like really well-known guys. They're now going against power cleans, front squats, and all that. Joe DeFranco is really a famous strength coach. He won't risk the injury to his athletes anymore with this stuff. He's finding guys who are messing up their elbows, their wrists, their fingers. I mean, if you have a guy that's like top level NCAA, wide receiver or something, you do not want to use risky modalities and risk hurting this guy, because what they do as an athlete is risky enough. Out there, the way they run and sprint and cut and so forth, the kind of collisions that they have. You want to make that training as safe as possible. You want to make it as general as possible, so they get as much strength transfer. It doesn't have to be fancy exercises. Basically squat, hinge, push, pull, horizontal and vertical, some type of rotation or anti-rotation, and then work the ancillary muscles of the neck, the fingers, the hands, the forearms, the grip, and obviously the feet, calves, and ankles are really neglected in a lot of people's training. Weak feet, ankles, and weak calves. A lot of guys leave that out. And, of course, the neck. Man, you know how many guys I know that don't train their neck? It's crazy, man. Even your jaw, I can remember watching Muhammad Ali, the old videos, they do like these little snippets of his training. He used to do a lot of jaw training. He had this really cool thing where he would take like a sling and hook it onto a, like a pull down, and then he would open his jaw against the resistance. I thought, that is freaking brilliant, dude, to strengthen the muscles of the jaw, because, it's a well-known fact that if your jaw is stronger, there's a lot less chance of knockout.
Yeah, a lot of guys used to chew beef jerky just to strengthen their jaw. They used to chew bubble gum all the time because how your jaw gets tired when you have bubble gum, and the bubble gum gets old, and you just keep chewing on it, and they would do that to keep their jaw strong.
It's funny. They show, remember when we brought up the Alexander Zass with the teeth lifting with that beam? I used to actually have a mouthpiece and do teeth lifting when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. It was very popular back in the 60s, teeth lifting for your neck and your jaws. I used to lift my little sister up. She used to lay down, and I put this little sling, and I do the neck work with my
What are you
kid sister.
feeling on those like neck harnesses with the chains?
Fantastic.
You like those?
Yeah. But,
That's controversial too because my trainer hates them.
you have to be careful, and some of them are really crappy design, man. They hurt your ears, and I already have cauliflower ears. I don't need to make it any worse. But they can be good. I think one of the best things ever invented was the old Nautilus 4-way neck machine. That was a damn good piece of equipment. And later, the Hammer Strength 4-way neck.
See, those things, it's like Kelly Starrett. I talked to him about those things, those neck machines. He's like, those are terrible for you.
Nah, that's bullshit, man.
Really?
Yeah.
How do I know who to believe?
Yeah, well, you got to try it yourself. I tell people to experiment. But you know what works really well that I don't think would be too controversial for anyone? Neck isometrics.
Yeah, you showed me those with a
Man,
belt.
they
holding onto
are
a belt. fantastic.
Hickson used to do a lot of neck isometrics. He used to use that rubber band,
and run
then he
uphills.
would. Well, he would walk back and just hold it.
Yeah.
It's almost like someone trying to pull you down into a front headlock or a front guillotine.
Yeah.
And then you go with it on your forehead and on your side, and you develop tremendous stability. I don't think the other stuff. I can see where it could be controversial because it all comes back to your technique, your form. If you're an idiot and you're using a lot of momentum and you're using poor technique, I could see where you can really mess your neck up. But isometrics, they're pretty safe.
Okay, but excluding isometrics, those neck machines, like moving your neck with those neck machines, where do you think the problems lie? You think the problems lie in people using momentum too much?
Too much weight, too much momentum, and not using good form. I mean, okay, we know that you can get really strong and really fit using shitty technique and form.
Right.
You see it all over the gym. You see huge guys, really muscular dudes, just throwing the crap out of the weights. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to go.
Right.
Many of those guys don't stand the test of time. Remember earlier I was saying, anyone under 60, if they haven't passed over, of course, that's pretty convenient for me now.
Right.
Saw you smiling there. But no, seriously, if you haven't been to the other side, there's a lot of stuff that I did in my early days. No way that I would advocate that stuff now, man.
Right.
But I was always a firm believer in working the neck, and I used neck harnesses successfully using really good strict form, not necessarily heavy weight. If you put yourself in a biomechanically inefficient position, you can really work those muscles really hard with very, very safe.
Now, when you talk about those neck harnesses, and you lift your neck up, and you can lie on a bench and put a plate on your head and lift your head up. Yeah. What about side-to-side movements?
You can also do it on the side.
And you're cool with those?
Yeah. Another one, well, remember too, in violent contact sports, someone's going to put your neck in some pretty weird positions, whether you want them to or not. So you got to kind of inure yourself to, those basic positions.
And what kind of repetitions are you talking about when you're doing neck exercises?
Pretty high reps. I always like. Well, it depends on the speed of movement too. You know, I mean, like I like a slow, high tension speed of movement to really fatigue the muscles. So it just depends how fast you're actually moving.
So just a real slow.
But usually I go by time under load. So somewhere between a minute to 90 seconds time under load is good.
For the entire set?
Yeah, for the set, like a 90-second set.
One of the things I've gotten into over the last year or so is long negatives.
I like long negatives.
Exploding on the initial movement, the power of the out movement. Like say if I do a chin up, exploding up, and then a very slow, maybe like 4 times as long, maybe even more than that on the way down. And
Negative emphasized training.
Yeah.
It can be very, very good. It's been used for a while. One of the big proponents of that type of training was the famous Mike Mentzer, the only guy ever to beat Arnold Schwarzenegger. We're talking about bodybuilding now. And it's real interesting because Mike used to use these very intense, brief exercises. The year he beat Arnold in the Mr. Universe show, Mike was only training about 90 minutes a week. And Arnold was training about 26 hours a week.
How is that possible?
Because of the high-intensity training.
90 minutes a week?
Yeah, he was very much into high-intensity training, like 30-minute workouts. His disciple, Dorian Yates.
But that's 3 30-minute workouts a week.
That's right. Go check him out. He has a whole website called Heavy Duty. He was a real pioneer in the high tension. He used a lot of negatives.
Oh, for
he was doing a lot of experimentation with isometrics towards the end.
That's crazy though that he could do just 90 minutes a week.
And of course they're all using steroids, obviously, So
Right.
that's that's
Helps.
that's without
Certainly
a given.
helps.
But people can't say it was just the steroids because Arnold was using steroids too.
We were talking about Pavel before the podcast. Pavel Tsatsouline, is that how you say it?
Tsatsouline, yeah.
Tsatsouline.
Uh-huh.
And he is a proponent of low reps, of doing things like under 5 reps, 5 reps or under.
Well, remember, his sport is his strength. Mm-hmm. That's what he does.
Right.
He's not a fighter. He's not a martial artist. He's not an athlete. His sport is weightlifting. If your goal is to lift as much weight as you can, his system works extremely well because that is the sport.
Right.
If you're an athlete and you want to use strength training to better you in your sport, the majority of your time should be spent doing your sport.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So the amount of weight isn't the most important thing necessarily because an athlete is not a strength specialist. So once you can deadlift or press a certain amount of weight, it's pretty much you're going to get diminishing returns. I mean, how strong do you need to be?
Right.
In a weight class sport. I mean, if you're able to do a double body weight deadlift, how much stronger do you need to be?
Right.
In order to get stronger, you're going to have to specialize, but that's going to take me away from the skills of my sport. And also, a lot of the low repetition stuff, that comes from the field of weightlifting. There's no doubt it's a strong do, but it's not necessary for me to do that low of repetition when I'm just training for general strength.
Well, his philosophy or his claims are very interesting because what his claims was that people doing these low rep exercises like 5 reps or under, they experience benefits in all of their sports. And that it translated to all the that power and strength translated to gymnastics and track and field.
All strength training is going to translate into sports to an extent. Olympic lifting works, powerlifting works. Low reps work, high reps work. I know many guys that did nothing but super high repetitions. Been plenty of guys like that. It all works one way or another. What you want, though, is to get as efficient as possible, and you don't want to be beat up for days after your workout, obviously. That was one of the reasons why he liked the low rep stuff, because it doesn't seem to beat you up quite as much. But I found that doing short, brief, intense workouts, usually even single sets, translated just as well as anything. I'll give an example of you've heard of the 1973 Miami Dolphins?
No.
They were the only they were under Don Shula. They were the only team ever to go undefeated and win the Super Bowl. No other team's done it before or since, ever in the history of the NFL.
They use cocaine.
Well,
They're in Miami.
But you know how they train? They trained
No.
on Nautilus machines with single set training.
What?
Yeah, there we go. So it all works. It all works. You can get in great shape no matter what you do.
It's just what works best.
What works best. I personally believe for a lifetime, and believe me, I have a lifetime of injuries. If you're getting hurt in your strength training, you're doing something wrong. Strength training should prevent injuries, not cause it. So there's something wrong with your technique and your form. Me being a wrestler and a jiu-jitsu guy, I can't afford to hurt myself. And of course, at my age now, you get hurt. Oh my God, it takes forever to get back. We know that fast, explosive training works, but we also know there's a much higher chance of injury. So for me, I like slow, high-tension reps, really controlled, and like you discovered, that slow negative.
Yeah, slow negatives seem to be having a really positive benefit on my training lately.
And I found that doing my exercises fast and explosively did not make me faster on the mat. I had to selectively pick the movements I wanted to be fast and explosive on and do those
And
fast.
drill those.
And drill the crap out of them until I was like a freaking machine.
One of the things that I've gotten into also over the last few months is grip strength. You
Grip
know those
strength is
captains
so
of
important,
Crush?
man. Yes.
I have a 167-pound one that I keep
Dude,
in my
you're close to
car.
that?
I just smash that fucker. I do it for 3 reps, and then I throw it down.
Well, thanks for taking it easy on my hand when we shook hands this morning, man.
Well, I started with a 120-pound one, and then I got a 167-pound one that I use now, but I have a 200-and-something pound one that I'm saving for when I get tired of the 167-pound one. But it's like there's a rabbit hole with that because I'm into squeezing things now. It's really weird. It's
Well,
like
just make sure it's not people's hands when you.
well, I just have gotten excited about the idea of strengthening in my hands because my strength handing has all been accidental. All for my hands. It's all been just attached to deadlifts and kettlebells and chin-ups and all the different stuff, and that's how my hands got strong. But I've never just actively trained my grip. So in doing this, I've been doing it I'll say 4 or 5 months now. Just smashing these things all the time.
Well, there's different types of grip strength. There's that crushing strength, which the captains of crush would give you, but there's also like endurance strength, which is really
roller
good
bars
for grappling. Well, just hanging off a high bar.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Either one hand or two.
Well, that's one of the things we found on Fear Factor that was interesting. We did this thing where we had people hang all over water on a bar, just hanging by their body weight, and the women all beat the men. We had these really strong men, really like big yoked up guys, but they were too heavy. And they
strength to weight ratio.
And they probably just did curls like a bunch of bitches.
Yeah. Well, the grip is really a lot of it. People just don't pay enough attention to it.
Yeah.
One reason why rope climbing has stood the test of time as a grappling modality is it's a very specific vertical type grip. Like you grab a hand or a neck or a wrist or forearm or even an ankle. Really good for grapplers, and man, it takes tremendous grip to climb a rope.
There's a lot of stress on your joints too.
Well, there can be. You have to know how to climb, but it has been an exercise that's been around forever.
Yeah, I've got a big fat rope in my garage. You've seen the gym that I have set up in my garage. I got this rope that I can't even get my hand all the way around it.
It's like one of those ropes that would tether off an ocean liner.
That's what they're for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's where they get them.
But I'll tell you, just hanging on that or squeezing it, just not even climbing, just hanging until your hand gives out, is a tremendous grip exercise.
Oh, for sure.
But, for jiu-jitsu and wrestling, I found that captains of crush don't translate as well as doing things like towel, chin-ups, obviously. Climbing a rope.
A lot of guys throw a gi over a chin-up bar and just pull themselves up with the gi.
It's a fantastic sports-specific grip strength.
Yeah.
Also, just hanging for time, like we talked about for shoulder health, awesome grip exercise. And there's a very interesting correlation between biological age and chronological age. Old people have really weak hands, so.
Well, then I'm like 20 because I'll smash shit.
There you go, man.
I have a friend who does these scapula exercises. He's an archer, and he hangs the way you're talking about, and then when he gets to the hanging position, he just lifts himself up like this.
That's a fantastic exercise.
And holds it. He's like pinching his shoulder blades together, just pulling his body up slightly with his arms completely locked out.
Those upper back muscles are so neglected, and it's good for posture, too.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I like to superset that with a set of regular pull-ups sometimes. Woo, do you feel that upper back? Because, usually when you do pull-ups, your arms get tired first.
Right.
But by pre-exhausting, the lats and the rhomboids and, your teres, all those back muscles, when you do your pull-ups, woo, man, you really feel your back.
So you do pull-ups,
I do
all your sets?
Well, not all the time, but I would do the scapular retractions first, jump down, shake out my grip a little bit, and then jump up and do the pull-ups. Wow, what a great little back workout that is.
So you do the scapular exercises first?
First, to pre-exhaust those muscles, because they're bigger and stronger than your little teeny grip forearm hands.
Right.
So usually what gives out first in pull-ups is the hands, the forearms, sometimes your biceps. Mm-hmm. So by pre-fatiguing those upper back muscles first, they get much better workout when you add in the arms.
Ah, that makes sense.
You temporarily fatigue those.
So when you do these sets of if you do like those scapular contractions, what would you call those? Is that what you call them?
I always call them scapular retractions.
Retractions?
Yeah, retraction.
How long would you hold that position for?
I usually like 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down.
Oh, short.
Yeah,
okay.
it's a short little movement.
Because he does it for 15 seconds.
2, 1,000. You could. Mm-hmm. I've actually done static contraction where I just pulled myself up and held it so I couldn't hold it. Like 30 to 40 seconds,
Yeah.
It just depends.
That was another thing that Pavel was talking about with planks. He was talking about like doing a plank, but contracting every muscle in your body and holding that position.
It's an isometric. It's called a overcoming isometric. There's 2 types of isometrics. One is, a yielding isometric. One is where you have a measurable weight. It could be your body weight. Let's say you hold a chin up at the top with your chin over the bar. Mm-hmm. It's a classic exercise called the flexed arm hang. Okay, you have a measurable weight there, right? The other version of that would be you just grab something and just pull as hard as you can. No way to measure it.
Right.
Both ways will get you strong as can be, strong as a beast. So that plank that you're talking about, it's like a yielding isometric in that you have a measurable weight, which is your body weight. And rather than just hang out to see how long you can survive, what happens is you start to let the back collapse a little bit. You start to relax certain areas of your body. And now it's just not nearly as effective. But if you're really trying to shorten the abdominals and really squeezing and creating this tension, you create a tremendous amount of muscle fatigue. And that should be the true purpose of exercise, to create that overload, that muscle fatigue.
And allowing your muscles to recover from that.
And then
establish
recovery is
a
everything.
new base of strength. Yeah. I have a friend, and a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are getting into this now, where they're doing super slow sets.
I love super slow sets. I was one of the original super slow trainers back in the day. I still do them. And as a man ages and you have all the dings in your shoulders and elbows and stuff, you'll find that you'll be drawn more and more to nice, slow, high-tension sets.
Really?
Very safe way to train.
How many seconds up and down do you suggest? Like, say, for something like a chin-up?
Well, Mike Mentzer, for bodybuilding hypertrophy, he found like 4-2-4, where you would like 4 seconds up, pause in the contracted position, and 4 seconds down. The contracted position of the push-up, the hard part, would be the bottom part. So you would hold just off the floor.
Right.
On a chin-up, it would be the top part.
So for a push-up, say, you would slowly go up for 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Then turn around.
Hold.
No, you would then
Would you
turn
hold it
around.
all, or just slowly?
Then I would go back down and hold at the bottom.
Okay, 1, 2, 3,
3,
4. And then how long would you hold at the
Hold
very bottom?
1,001, 1,002, and then
Just
start
2
the next one.
seconds and then
Yeah.
back up 1. And that's surprisingly difficult to do. For someone who thinks of a push-up as being a pretty mild exercise.
Dude, you can just sandblast yourself with just about 5 or 6 reps if you do it right.
Yeah.
I've even done them slower. I've gone like, 10-10, 15-15. Try this. If you like negative accentuated, sometime you're in a hotel room, you want to get a quick pump for your comedy act, start
You
at the
don't
top.
get pumped for a comedy.
Yeah,
you got to stretch out.
You're a dude. Yeah. You got the rep. But probably the fittest comic out there. Don't you find that comics in general are pretty bad lifestyle?
A lot of alcoholics.
Yeah, smoking.
Yeah, a lot of smoking.
Yeah, it's the nature of the business.
It's nightclub life, It's very unhealthy. It's also, there's this false correlation that you have to be an abuser of your body to be funny.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I never knew
Well, that vanity and taking care of your body are connected, and that vanity is ego, and then having a big ego and being vain, like it's anti-comedy. But I just think, I don't think it's vanity to take care of your body. I just think it's intelligence. I think it's foolishness to not take care of your body. I just know too many people whose bodies are literally falling apart, and who are my age or younger, who have like just massive issues.
I've seen it myself, man. It's really scary.
Yeah, and they realize with time the error of their way, and it's usually too late. If you start a rigorous physical fitness program when you're 45, like, boy, you got a kind of an uphill battle there.
You got an uphill battle.
Although,
it's not impossible.
Well, you know Anthony Bourdain. You know what's
Yes.
going on with him.
Yeah, he's a jiu-jitsu guy now.
He's
just
got
his
a blue belt.
man. Yeah.
He started at 58.
Yeah.
A lifetime of drinking and smoking, and even a problem with heroin in his youth.
Getting himself cleaned up. I
But
heard
that's
his
incredible.
wife's into it too.
Oh, she's way
I heard
beyond
she's
into
actually
it.
pretty good, man.
She's very good, and she's obsessed, and that's one of the reasons why he got into it in the first place, is because his wife is a maniac.
And he didn't want to get choked out anymore.
Well, no, I mean, she talked him into it because she loves it so much, and then once she actually bribed him with narcotics.
Whoa.
That's how she got him in.
Okay.
Yeah, she told him she'd give him Vicodins. And so she got him into it, and then once he got into it, he's a very and I say this in a good way. He's a very obsessive guy. He gets obsessed with things. That's why he's such a great chef and a great writer, and he's great on his television show. And he got obsessed with jiu-jitsu. He travels everywhere. He brings his gi. He trains every day. He trains twice a day. He'll do a private, and then he'll do a class every day. Every day.
He trained with Chris Crook, the guy I was telling you about in Maui, my web guy.
Yeah.
He trained with Anthony. He said it was really fun.
That's awesome.
Back to that push-up. So try starting at the top, right? You very slowly use your iPhone, like a little timer on there or something. I use one with a metronome, so I can hear the ticks. And I go on down in 30 seconds. And when my chest just barely grazes the ground, I do a slow, what we call turnaround, where you change direction. Very slowly come back up in 30 seconds. I don't lock out of the top. There's no resting at the top, because the top is just too easy, right? You could hold it forever.
Right.
So I keep my elbows just a little unbent and then 30 seconds back down. Dude, you have the pump of your life. 90 seconds time under load. It's like, wow, what an amazing workout. One freaking rep.
So-
Actually, 1.5 reps. Negative, positive, negative.
Just negative, positive, negative for 90 seconds.
Yeah.
So do you set it like a timer for
Yeah,
90
yeah.
seconds? Wow.
Well, no, not for 90 seconds, just the running stopwatch.
Mm-hmm.
I use like a little thing on my iPhone that goes tick, tick, tick. So
What is it? Is it a
what is it? I don't know. It's just one of those many apps, but I wanted one that had an audible tick. So if I can't actually see the iPhone, at least I can listen to the seconds. So
Mm-hmm.
it's real easy to fool yourself when to go on too fast.
Now, do you do the same sort of technique for squats or for any other
Yeah,
exercises?
man. I have this one body weight squat where you face the wall, where you can't unload by leaning forward, letting your torso lean forward. Whew, man, what a killer.
You face the wall?
I face the wall. Great for your
Okay.
posture, man. Your toes against the wall.
So what are you doing? Like you're facing the wall, and how close are you to the wall?
My toes, nose, everything's touching the knees.
And then
my
you
hands are out to the side. I slowly lower down.
And you keep your face on the wall, so
Your nose is just barely skimming, and it's great for posture because your back is really arched, so your back's working isometrically. And I don't do the top third of the movement with a body weight squat because it's just too damn easy. I would recover.
Okay.
You're so mechanically efficient at the top
right.
that there's no work.
So you get to the top third, and then you go back down again.
Back down. Sometimes I use that 30-30-30 for that one. It's absolutely killer. When you're done, you just basically your legs are just crippled for a second or two.
I've been doing slow Hindu push-ups, and I'm just amazed at how tired you can get.
It's amazing.
Like a
isn't it?
set of 20 slow Hindu push-ups, and your heart is ready to explode.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't have to go fast to get a good cardio metabolic workout.
I'm a big fan of that Hindu push-up too, just for the range of motion. It's such a wide range of motion in that.
Really
that technique.
good spinal mobility.
Yeah.
I would say, arguably, that might be the only push-up a person would need just for fitness. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's a hell of an exercise. It's basically upward and downward dog of yoga combined with movement.
Yeah, and I do it with a 40-pound weight vest sometimes.
Dude, you're a beast.
Well, it's just such a great workout. To
Try
do.
slowing it down even more. Try doing 10 seconds down,
Yeah.
10 seconds up. Just so you don't have to keep adding more weight to your vest.
Yeah.
Also, remember, time under load is really important. I'll give you an example. I went to the gym one time. I saw this guy just jacking off pull-ups like crazy. He was using a lot of momentum. It was basically 1 second up, 1 second down. The dude did 25, which is impressive, but he was pretty much yanking up his joints,
Right.
So I had my client do a set of 6, but he was doing 4-2-4 each one. So the guy that did the 25, his time under load was only 50 seconds. My guy did 6. His time under load was a minute. My guy actually did more mechanical work and was physically, in some ways, stronger, better strength to weight ratio. So,
What do you think about those CrossFit style chin-ups?
absolutely insane. I mean, we talked about this last time. That guy,
Kipping.
the Greg Glassman guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's an obese cripple, man.
Well, he's got health issues.
Well,
And I know that he kind of
He's younger
started
than
it
me,
off.
man. It's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? I could have had health issues. The injuries that I've had. If anyone has the excuse for not training, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but
Right.
man, I never missed a training due to an injury. I always, man, if you hurt your shoulder, you got your other shoulder and your legs that you can work in your core, right? I busted up my foot one time, so I was able to work. You always work around it.
There's something to do.
Always something to do. Not training just because you're injured. I blew out L4 in my spine one time just doing the stupid abdominal rollouts from the feet.
What's an abdominal rollout?
Oh, I saw this Jackie Chan movie, and I was really inspired. And, you use those ab wheels, those little wheels.
Yeah, I
and
use
from
those
your
things.
toes, you roll the whole way out, the whole way back. I was pretty good at that at one time.
From your toes, you roll the whole way out and the whole way back.
Yeah.
Which I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
Can you? Yeah, ab roller Jackie Chan. This is pretty inspiring.
So you mean like you make like
Like,
a
I'm actually-
scissors and
yeah,
then
like
go that?
like an inchworm.
Oh, okay. And you blew your back out doing
Well,
that?
I left my back.
Okay, this guy's doing it.
Oh, here we go. There we go. I could do that. I probably still could do it, but I'm just too afraid to do it.
Is that hard to do?
Fuck yeah. It's unbelievable, man. Tried it. Well, no, don't try because I don't want you to hurt your back. But you got to really, really brace your abdominals and keep your glutes tight because the shearing force on the lumbar is really high, as I found out.
I don't do those, but I do a lot of ab wheel stuff. But I
Well,
just never do it like that.
You could do it off your knees.
that
Do you
guy
know what
looks
the
like-
same movement is? Hanging leg raises. Very safe.
Oh, okay.
Some people call it toes to bar. Mm-hmm. Try doing it with no momentum. Slow up, touch your tippy toes to the bar, pause for a second, slowly lower. If you do 3 or 4, wow, you're pretty strong core.
So
It's the
with
same
the legs
movement as
straight,
that.
with the legs straight,
Yeah, with your legs straight.
like try to almost like you're touching your toes.
Toes to the
like,
bar. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not the ankles or shins. That means the person's too tight in their hamstrings. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I blew my back. I had an L4 subluxation and spondylolisthesis, and I was told I might need surgery. I was
So
in
you have
agony.
like a bulging disc.
Oh my God, I had sciatica so bad, Joe, I couldn't even walk.
When you were here,
Agony,
did
man.
I have the reverse hyper machine in the back when you were here?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. What do you think about those? Have you used those at all?
I have, but the strength curve, I think I told you, is off because right where your glutes and your lower back are in the weakest part of the curve,
Mm-hmm.
the resistance is at its highest.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know, you'd almost be better off putting ankle weights on and just doing reverse leg raises.
Man, I just love it though for decompression of the spine and strengthening the lower back area. I mean, my whole back area is just so thick and strong from doing that exercise. It gives me a lot of relief. I'm a big fan of that machine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against it per se.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's just as good, if not better, exercises that you can use. Because, I mean, you know, in my case, I can't travel with a reverse hyper. But
Yeah, you'd have a hard time checking that thing.
I tell you what I do enjoy is the 45-degree back extension bench, where you do back extensions. Fantastic exercise.
Like, is that called a Roman chair? Is that what it's called?
Not quite a Roman chair, but it's kind of along those lines. I'm not talking about the glute ham raises.
Right.
I'm actually talking about 45-degree back extension.
Right.
I was at Arthur Jones Ranch when he was doing his experiments with MedX, which was a machine for back rehabilitation. And in the MedX studies, he's doing it with this Dr. Wayne Pollock from University of Florida Medical School. And they found that people's backs are pretty undeveloped and pretty weak, and it can cause a lot of problems. So they were trying to invent a machine to work that area. But the freaking machines were like $50,000. It was ridiculous. You know, you're getting all these electrical feet out and all this stuff. So I said to Arthur, I said, surely there must be a very simple exercise that you could do that would give you really, really good results. Because he was basically poo-pooing most back exercises. It's not really working the back. Most of them work the glutes and the hamstrings, like kettlebell swings or deadlifts.
Right.
More glute than hamstring. So he said the back extension. He says that would come as close. And I started religiously practicing back extension. And man, I'll tell you, that's one area of my back that was always strong right up until that point where I did those abdominal rollouts. That was the first back injury I ever had.
How'd you get over that?
Well, I went to a Rolfer. I had this woman that was actually a professor at the Rolf Institute. You know, they do circuits. Really good hands-on Rolfer. She was the one that I heard the word surgery come out of her mouth because she was pretty much anti-surgery. That was the first time I ever heard someone say, "Oh, Steve, you really did it this time. I don't know whether I can help you, really. You really messed your back up. I'm going to try, but I can't guarantee anything."
Whoa.
So she would put me on their table, like in a tent position where the table goes like this with my, you know.
So it's bent
And
for
she-
people who are
she
not
was
listening or listening. rather
literally
not
taking
watching.
her fingers and trying to rotate that vertebrae back into position. And then I was going to this guy for pain. I didn't want to take painkillers. This Dr. Frank Gu in Philadelphia on Arch Street. He was shooting me with the needles. for
Acupuncture?
For pain relief. And I would walk in there in absolute agony, and I would walk out probably 60 to 70% reduction in the pain. And it would last for a day or two, and then it would come back, of course. But I was just doing it just to get out of pain.
Right.
And over the course of, let's see, how many sessions was it? It was like 8 sessions. By the eighth session, all of a sudden, I woke up one day and the pain was completely
So slowly relaxing, and the disc was going back in, and
finally squirted back in there.
stretching, anything like.
I
along
was
those
sitting
lines
in
too?
a back chair. I used to be the trainer for the owners of the Philadelphia Eagles, the Jeff and Christina Laura. They're divorced now, but Jeff still owns the Philadelphia Eagle team. He used to have all these really cool, nifty devices because he suffered a lot from back. It was a chair that you sit on a sling, like this playground swings, with these two clamps that grab you underneath your armpits and clamp, right? So you're clamped. You can adjust it, and then you slowly release the sling. So you're just basically sitting with your back completely just hanging there from your armpits.
Huh.
And I would sit there and watch TV for an hour or so with my back in this traction. That really gave me a lot of relief.
Yeah, spinal decompression is gigantic.
Yeah, the back chair. It was a really expensive thing. I just borrowed his for like a couple months. Man, that thing really helped.
What do you think about those those hang-ups where you
Inversions
teeters?
on that? Yeah.
You like those?
I do. I didn't have the table or the room for it at the time, although I do like it. I did have inversion boots that I used to hang off my pull-up bar.
Mm-hmm.
My problem was with the sciatic, I couldn't get into the position. It was just too painful. I had to, I was in too much
You were
pain.
so far gone.
I was so far gone. Everything was killing me. But once it went away, it was like it never happened. Never happened. But, despite that, I didn't stop training. I was still doing super slow machine work, pull downs, and chest presses. And interestingly enough, with that injury, riding the Schwinn Aerodyn, those air bikes with the handles, that didn't hurt. It actually felt good. I would feel good for like 30, 40 minutes after that workout with zero pain, and then it would slowly come back on me again.
Those Aerodyn machines seem to be like a really popular exercise for strength and conditioning for fighters.
A lot of wrestlers use them because
Yeah.
I'll tell you, man, the faster you go, the harder it is. The air displacement. The thing that's so cool about it is you're getting both upper and lower body together.
Yeah.
So it's not just lower body aerobics. Your whole body's involved in a strength endurance.
Do those bother you with your shoulder? With your shoulder being
No. Any kind of vertical movement, horizontal movement, no problem. It's the overhead press that. But interestingly enough, I can still do Hindu push-ups.
That is interesting.
It's the angle. I can angle it, and also corkscrewing the hands, gripping, activating the lats, and all that kind of stuff can really keep you out of pain.
Steve, we just did 3 hours.
Holy shit!
Flew by.
Wow, man.
It's over. I know you have this video, though. Tell people about this video, your isometric video.
Well, I just came out with my second isometric because I was so thrilled with the first one. I started looking deeper into isometrics, and I found these old school techniques that I made an advanced isometric video.
So is it a full workout? Like
Yeah,
you go through it?
What I did was, in the first one, I had either yielding or overcoming isometrics. Here, for advanced guys that are really strong like yourself, I combine yielding and overcoming isometrics in the same exercise. And boy, I'll tell you, even an Olympic athlete could get a full workout in a hotel room with virtually no equipment. Just your jiu-jitsu belt is all you'd really need. Dude, you would know you had a workout. Very safe, no chance of... of course, some idiot could screw it up and get himself hurt, but the chance of hurting yourself with isometrics is virtually none. Good way to also work around an injury. If you have a foot, ankle, knee, elbow, you can still do isometrics. You could even potentially do isometrics if you're in bed. Let's say you had an injury in a car accident where you could actually keep your muscles in shape laying in bed.
Whoa.
It's pretty cool stuff.
Where can people get it? How do they get it?
The website is maxwellsc.com. S is in strength, C is in conditioning, maxwellsc.com. And I think, there's a link to the page. Let's see.
Maxwell SC training. Is that what you say? MaxwellSC.com?
Yeah, MaxwellSC.com.
Okay.
It's a really good video. I put a lot. I shot it in Maui Jiu-Jitsu, and it's really, really one of the best ones I've ever done.
All right, beautiful. And people want to get a hold of you on Twitter. It's
Twitter,
Steve
Snapchat.
Maxwell SC.
Yep, Steve Maxwell.
Snapchat, all that jazz.
Yeah, man.
Instagram.
Feed the media machine, baby.
The media machine.
You got it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you being on, man.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
All right, friends. We'll be back tomorrow. See you soon. Bye-bye.